Okay, so I chose this picture because the 10th house rules kingdoms. And so it rules kings and kingdoms as well. I mean, we think of nowadays, we think of the 10th house as being specifically kind of about career. But if you've looked at any of the other videos that we've looked at or we've talked about that have talked about career, what we found is that the technique for finding career doesn't really involve the ruler of the 10th house specifically. It involves usually quite a few other things. And if we have some time today, we'll maybe we'll go and look through some of that. We'll look through some of those techniques. Although I do have some stuff about what is to be looked at for both kind of honor and dignity, or basically kind of fame or high rank, and then also for what kind of work is to be done. And that stuff comes from Johannes Schöner from the late 15th, early 16th century. So, but we generally tend to use the Bonatti things when we do any delineation. And so Bonatti has his own very specific way of looking at how to find the career in the chart. And it has very little to do with the ruler of the 10th house. Okay, so we come then to this. We usually start this way with Deborah Holding, and she takes us from, this is from her book, what the Temples of the Sky, Houses, Temples of the Sky. And so she starts with Manilius, who's from around the 1st century, and then she brings it all the way into the modern rulings. And we can see glory, distinction, honors. Okay, so what we're going to see is that there's going to be quite a bit of continuity. Popular, favor, power, the rule of law and justice in the courts, alliance with foreign nations, fame relative to one's station, consummation of success, wedlock. It's called the Temple of Venus. Isn't that interesting? And maybe that's where this issue of wedlock comes from. I've never really seen that. Even in Valens, I've never really seen that. I know that the 11th house has been connected to Venus because of friendship and amicability. Excuse me. But I can't say that I've ever seen the 10th house called the Temple of Venus. I'm interested in seeing why that would be the case. Career, accomplishment, honors, reputation, wife and children. Okay, so maybe Temple of Venus has to do with wife and children, right? Because this, and it looks like there's a connection with initially there's a connection with the 10th house and marriage. And what's interesting about that, in my opinion, is that in Vedic astrology, both the 10th house and the 7th house represent status. And it's because the 7th is the 10th house from the 10th house. And so the 10th and so that the 7th also is connected with similar significations as the 10th. And so this kind of feels, I don't know, it feels a little bit similar, or this feels almost like it might be working a 4th house from the 7th thing, right? Because if it's the wife or children, or yeah, I don't know, that's really interesting how that's coming up. Hey, Layla.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. So we just started, so you're right on time. So for Micus, who's like 5th century, 4th century, life and vital spirit, all our actions, home, country. Now, this is much larger than what we're using. Now, when we started with Manilius, it was right on what we tend to look at it for. Glory, distinction, honors, favor, power of the rule of law, etc. But when we get to this Formicus thing, life and vital spirit, that's usually connected to what? The ascendant. All our actions. Okay, now that is because remember the name for the Greek name for the 10th house is praxis, which translates roughly to action. Home, country. Now, wouldn't that be connected to the 4th house? Professional career, okay, makes sense. In all our dealings with others. All our dealings with others, wouldn't that be the 7th house? Infirmities of the mind, cardinal, and the greatest influence. I'm wondering, you know, from how that's described, I'm wondering if the 10th house as the culmination, if the 10th house as the culmination of all of the angles has within it the significations of all of the other angles. Life and vital spirit is 1. All of our actions is 10. Home and country is 4. Professional career is 10. All of our dealing with others is 7. Infirmities of the mind is 1. Cardinal and the greatest influence. So government with council of nobles, Al-Biruni, absolute authority, success in business, commerce, professions, liberality. And then, of course, coming to Lily, honor, dignity, royalty, commanders, judges, authority, profession, mothers. Now, isn't that interesting? Judges he puts in the 10th, but we know that Benatti put the judges in the 9th. Aspirations, career, professors, or professions, social status. That's the modern version. So I think it's interesting to see that. This Formicus meaning, in my opinion, kind of connects with how we've been looking at the angles from a medieval standpoint, in which we look at them for what they mean, but we also look at them for what advances, right? So it's not just about, oh, what does the 10th house mean, but a planet in the 10th house is able to advance. So let's say the ruler of the 6th house is in the 10th, then that 6th house signification gets the opportunity to show itself, meaning that illness could show up, bad fortune could show up, right? So, okay, midheaven, 10th house, as the sun approaches the midheaven, it attains its maximum strength and magnificence of radiation, right? So that's the noon, that's high noon. Correspondingly, the 10th house signifies the status, reputation, and position in life to which we aspire. Manilius called it the citadel of the skies. A citadel is a city, like a city or kingdom, and referred to is referred to as the temple of glory, distinction, honor, and the consummation of success. So all of the things that we pretty much think about for the 10th house are connected here. However, I have an issue, because the main thing that I've noticed, and of course this connects in with my pet peeve around modern astrology, but the main thing that I've noticed is that people have a tendency to just look at the 10th house ruler or even the sign on the 10th house. Like I've seen people say, what kind of career should I go in and go into? And somebody on Reddit says, oh, you've got Aries on the midheaven, you should do blah, 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 right? Of course, that's as shallow as it gets. But even Mars rules Aries, so you should be doing whatever Mars represents. Doesn't even seem to be what is going on. So maybe we can use today to kind of look at, well, what does the 10th house ruler actually mean? And then also today, I've got a bunch of kings and noblemen, kings and queens and noblemen to look at to see the connection with the 10th house and kingship and kingdoms. Okay, so now we come to Valens, who's 2nd century. Both benefics and malefics rejoice in this place if they have been assigned the lot, right? That means the lot of fortune, the ascendant, or the daemon, that means the lot of spirit. If any of the benefics are in it when rising, or if they have contact with the moon, tyrants and kinds are born, governors of districts, men known by name in many places, right? So it says if the benefics are in the 10th, and there's contact with the moon, right? Then which makes perfect sense. Men known by name in many places. The ruler of this place, if situated favorably, makes vigorous, successful men. If situated unfavorably, it makes feeble, unsuccessful men. If the ruler is setting and a malefic is in conjunction or in opposition to this place, it makes failures, as well as sterile or childless men. Now that's interesting. So it seems like the 10th house is a place of ultimate potentiality for all things, right? So if a benefic is there, it's supposed to be good. If a malefic is there, it could fuck things up, right? Because it's going to have just as much power to make itself known as the benefic, right? Now, of course, if the malefic is in its own sign or in exaltation or is ruling the 10th house itself, then of course it's not going to act in this malefic a nature or a way. Coming to Al-Kabisi, the 10th, that of kingdoms and dealings, kingdom and dealings. Okay, so this is the first time we've really seen kings and kingdom. And I'll tell you why. Because in the Hellenistic period, kings and queens were represented by, can anybody tell me which houses they were represented by? Kings and queen? The ninth and the third, right? Because the third house is called what? Goddess or queen. And the ninth house is called God. And remember, during the medieval period, the highest authority in the land after God, unless it's Rome, is the king, right? That's how King Henry VIII was able to wrangle a divorce and start the Church of England, because Wolsey and his advisors basically said to him, "Hey, this is England. You're the highest authority of the land, who only answers to God. Thus, if Rome says you can't have a divorce from Catherine of Aragon, fuck them. Start your own damn church," which is exactly what he did. And so that's why the Episcopal Church is also known as the Church of England. And to this day, the Queen of England is the head of the church. So the 10th is the royal house. Now this is 9th century, 8th, 9th, 10th century, 7th, 8th, 9th century. All right, so we're starting to move into this period where we move things away from the 9th house. And it might be because the 9th house is cadent. And maybe to the Islamic medievalists, it didn't make sense to them to use a cadent house to represent something that brings so much dignity, right? I mean, it's one thing for the 9th house to represent priests and God and religion and things of that nature. And there is a certain amount of splendor, certainly back then, see, even now, there is a certain amount of splendor connected with religion. But the 10th house is the secular power. And so maybe that's where it's coming down. Maybe, I mean, even though I just said there's no higher authority in the land after God, but the king is actually the secular power. And all of this stuff in Christianity has been kind of fought out or battled out between the papacy and the European kings. And especially in the 12th and 13th centuries, there's this thing called the investiture problem, or the investiture scandal. And the investiture scandal or dispute is really about who gets to appoint a bishop. Does a king get to appoint the bishops, or does the Pope only get to appoint bishops? And so this was a huge, it took up almost the entire 12th century, this dispute between the popes and the Holy Roman Emperor and the king of France. Matter of fact, it culminated, and we'll talk about that later, but it culminates in the early 14th century with where the king of France basically abducts the Pope and slaps him in the face and treats him really badly, etc. And that's where all of a sudden this idea of the Pope being the ultimate authority in the land goes. This is important to me because the Pope was a king. The Pope was a monarch. And so we're going to be looking at popes. We're going to be looking at kings. We're going to be looking at noblemen today. So Al-Khabizi, the 10th is the royal house and is of works and loftiness, also of kingdom and memory and voice and masteries and mothers. Voice, this idea of voice. Now, it's not so much voice like in singing voice, it's the voice of command. It's basically when I talk, who listens? That's the 10th house. So the 10th house is the house where when you speak, others listen and respond. And do you have that power? Do you have the power to make people listen and respond to you in the way that you want, or do you not? And masteries and mothers. And it signifies the middle of the years of life. And Andaragar says the first Lord of Triplicity of the royal house signifies work and exaltation and the highest station. The second one signifies voice, there we go, and courage in the same. And the third signifies its stability and durability. So we will be looking at all of these charts with the triplicity rulers. We'll be looking at, we'll maybe look to see kind of parts of kingdom. We'll be looking to see parts of, we'll be looking to see our mutants as well, maybe. We'll kind of go into some of that stuff too. Here is Benate. So, of course, Benati, the compiler, Al-Buaz and other ancients said the 10th house is a royal house and signifies empires and kingdom. and professions and dignities and offices in every art. Now, here's the thing, and offices, rather. Your profession can turn you into a king, right? Think of somebody like Michael Jordan, right? So Michael Jordan is a king, or was it, or what's the other one? LeBron James, King James. King James, oh my God. If anybody can find LeBron James's astrological chart, because he's called king. He's called King James. So I didn't even think about that. But LeBron James, okay, so LeBron James is called King James. Where's his kingdom? The basketball court. Ella Fitzgerald, wait, the Queen of Soul. Aretha Franklin was called the Queen of Soul. I've got Aretha Franklin's chart, we'll put her up. She was called the Queen of Soul. What was her kingdom? Her kingdom was music, or soul. Her kingdom was soul music. Same thing with the king of rock and roll, right? Good old Elvis Presley, who is the king, right? So I've got Elvis and I've got Aretha, and we'll bring both of those in. Can you think of anybody else? Can you think of anybody else who's been, well, oh, wait a minute, I can.
Hey, I got King of Pop.
Who?
King of Pop.
Who is that?
Michael Jackson.
Oh, you're right, King of Pop. I thought you said King of Cups. I'm like, who is that? King of Pop, thank you. Michael Jackson, fantastic. Then Duke Ellington, Count Basie.
And didn't they used to call Stevie Nicks the queen of like rock and roll?
I don't think so. Not that I know of. I mean, I don't remember. I mean, she's from my era, and I don't remember that. I mean, I think that was given to her later, like after she was, already a legend. But not during her career.
Does it matter?
Not really. I mean, well, in my opinion, it does, because Aretha was called the Queen of Soul during her career. Elvis was called the King of rock and roll during his career. Michael Jackson was called King of Pop towards the end, but he was still performing. Stevie Nicks, during all that time that she was performing, was never called Queen of Rock and Roll. As a matter of fact, she wouldn't have been. It would have, in my opinion, the Queen of Rock and Roll, when Stevie Nicks, Stevie Nicks is 70s. During that period, the Queen of Rock and Roll was Linda Ronstadt. Does anybody remember her? So yeah, I would have more thought that Linda Ronstadt was the queen of rock and roll, and in my opinion, she was back then. She was fucking amazing. Alboaz, and okay, we've already said that. Let's see, whom God willed master to be. Okay, offices in every art which someone practices, whence he is called a master. This is right up the alley with what we're talking about. When you're called a king, when you're called queen, you've achieved a source of mastery, or a sense of mastery that exceeds all others. This is the 10th house. How you exceed, how you advance beyond others based on your ability or your actions. And he whom God willed to be a master said that it signifies mothers, grandmothers, and all such old female ancestors. Why? Because your male ancestors are the 4th house. And so their wives are the 7th from the 4th, which is the 10th, and mothers-in-law. And At-Da'ullah said, wherefore it signifies divine things and honors and positions of civil authority and the like. And Al-Kindi said that it signifies the king, glory, and the reputation of one's worth. And Al-Battani said that it signifies judges judging a case and overseers of works, and a certain one of the ancients, and said that it signifies the stolen substance of thievery. Now, I wonder if that's because the 10th is the 4th from the 7th, and lost objects belong to the 4th house. So I wonder if that has something to do with that. And Al-Khabisi said it signifies the half of the years of life. And Al-Andaragar said that, and we've already seen that, royal house signifies power and exaltation and the loftiness of the seat of power, the highest dwelling. The second one signifies the voice of command and boldness of the same. So he's paraphrasing, making it a little bit more lofty. And the third one signifies its stability and durability. So once again, plenty of, oops. Plenty. Oops. Hold on a second. I'm gonna start one more time. Hey, Suching. I think this is just as good because I can at least do what I need to do here. Oh, here we go. Okay, 10th house is royal and the medium cheli. This signifies dominion, honors, magistracy, office, nation, all kinds of studies and liberal arts. Isn't that interesting? And the mother, it rules the lower part of the hips, knees. Now, all kinds of studies and liberal arts belonged here. What's he say about belong to the 9th house? What does Schörner, this is from Johannes Schörner. What does Schörner say about the 9th house? We seek piety, truth, the sex of men. So he's really specifically connecting it to religion, but there's wisdom, religion, long journeys, wisdom, divination, philosophy, and the interpretation of dreams, not studies. So this is a different thing because 200 years, 300 years earlier, Bonatti is saying that the 9th house represents all teachers and all students, the 9th house. So this is changing. And look also how the remember that Manilius called the 10th house he called the 10th house I want to make this smaller. Hold on a second. Okay, so as we saw, basically, it means he basically kind of moved that on. So within that 300-year period, or that, yeah, because really what Schörner is from the end of the 16th century, into the 15th century, no, into the 15th century and the beginning of the 16th century, and Bonatti is deep in the 13th. Right? So with somewhere within that 200-year period, Schörner decided to make a change, or some people decided to make changes. So now we come to the 17th century and Lily. Kings, princes, dukes, earls, judges, prime. Okay, so judges. So it looks like when we're looking for judges, we want to look at Jupiter, right, which we already know represents judges, and the 10th house, not the 9th. Prime officers, commanders in chief, whether in armies or towns, all sorts of magistracy. We're going to talk about the word magistery and magistrate and all of that, and officers and authority. Mothers, honor, preferment, dignity, office, lawyers, the profession or trade anyone uses. It signifies kingdoms, empires, dukedoms, countries. It has of colors red and white and rules the knees and hams. Hams are what's the back of the thighs? What's that called? I forget what they're called. Anyway, it's the back of the thighs. It's called the medium cheli or midheaven and is feminine because significators are Capricorn and Mars. Either Jupiter or the sun do much fortunate in this house, whether they are posited, when they are posited therein. Saturn or K2 usually deny honor, although that's not necessarily true because if you remember when we initially looked at how to find fame, how to find high dignity in a chart based on Bonatti, you wanted to see Saturn in a night chart in the 10th house. But little esteem, let's see, as to persons of quality or but little esteem in the world to a vulgar person, not much joy in his profession, trade, or mystery if a mechanic. Okay, and so I think the next is, okay, so now we come into what Schörner decided we should be looking at when we're looking at honors and dignity. Okay, so when we're looking at how well is the person going to do in life, how high, how dignified are they going to get? So we would look at the 10th, its Lord, the part of kingship, which we're going to look at, its Lord, the almuden of the significator of kingship, right, which is next to this, the 3 triplicity Lord is of the 10th house, the first triplicity of the 8th house, which represents death. I wonder why we would do that. The second triplicity Lord of the 11th, which represents friends. And the second triplicity Lord of the 1st house, which represents the middle portion of life, which corresponds to the 10th house. Isn't that interesting that the first, oh no, it's the 3rd Lord of the triplicity of the 8th. 3rd Lord of the triplicity of the 8th represents what? It represents your inheritances and estates. So that's interesting. I saw first Lord, but it was really the third Lord. So that's why Scherner has made that list of what you should be looking at. Note that he includes in this list what's on the next side, which is the Almutin for kingship. And so remember from last time when we looked at the sixth, or we looked at the second house, when we did these Almutins, we would find what the degree of the 10th house is, what the degree of the Lord of the 10th, what the degree of the part of kingship, what the degree of its Lord, and what the degree of the sun are. And then we would get all of those together. We would then come to figure out who got the highest score, and the planet with the highest score would then become the Almutin that represents kingship and honor and dignity. Okay. Was that the last one? Oh. Magistery or work. So magistery is another term for work, right? So you're a master, and of course the word magic comes in there. So it's basically what you can affect with what you have. One of the things, for those of you, if there's anybody here who's interested in tarot or who does tarot, I think you all know that I started with tarot first. I've been studying tarot since 1989. So really, really longer than astrology. I didn't start working with astrology until 92. And I had an amazing teacher in tarot, amazing foundation in tarot. And I'm so lucky, and it was amazing. However, one of my teacher, she very much kind of organized our group around this tarot card called the Magician. And the Magician represents a bunch of different things. It's also, the Magician is correspondent to Mercury. And that's a later correspondence that the later Kabbalah people did. But the really aspect about the Magician is that the Magician is standing in front of a table. He's standing in front of a table, and on the table are the four suits, right? The wands, the swords, the cups, the pentacles. The four suits represent the four different areas of life. And so he's got this wand. He himself is holding a wand. And then on the table are is everything in his life where something needs to happen. And he must apply his energy to the things that are on the table in order to make whatever happen. And so what I used to say is that when he touches the wand, leaves sprout. When he touches the cup with his wand, it fills with nectar. When he touches the sword with wand, sparks fly. When he touches the pentacle with the wand, it multiplies. The pentacles multiply. So that's essentially this idea of magistery. And so now when we think about, so the Magician is the embodiment of the magistery. It's the power of the Magician that makes the magistery happen. So it's the difference between John down the street, who I take my card to, who every time I go to him, I have to take it back, and Alfred 3 miles down the street, who the last time I took it to him, I didn't need to go back for another 3 years. That's the difference between a person's magistery and mastery, right? Alfred is the master. Alfred is really working his magistery. The magistery of being a mechanic, both Alfred and John are involved in, but the master, the one who has advanced beyond, the one who has exceeded all others, right, which is also the 10th house, is Alfred. So when we're looking for what it is we would look for to find the person's magistery or work, or what kind of work they will do, obviously the 10th and its Lord, the Lord of Magistery. Now I have no idea. Oh, I think maybe that must be what that is. Unless he's talking about, okay, so Benatti actually, Benatti or some of these older astrologers actually, what's the word I'm looking for? They reserved 3 planets to represent magistery: Mercury, Venus, and Mars. And so And so you were supposed to figure out which of those 3 planets represented the Magistery based on whether they were connected to the moon or something like that. He could be talking about that. Venus, Mercury, oh, bam! Venus, Mercury, Mars. Damn. It's so funny. Maybe if I just read the fucking thing, you know, I wouldn't have had to go into that little spiel. Although I probably would have had to go into the spiel after, because you've been like, why did they put those 3 planets there? But sure enough, there we go. Lord of Magistery is one of those 3 planets, or in this case, he's using all 3. The Almuten of the significators of work in Magistery, right? Which is on the other side here. The part of work in Magistery, which will be one of the things that we would look at to find. And then the first triplicity Lord of the 10th house, which represents how high in life the person will go, right? What kind of, you know, how they will be dignified. And then for the Almuten of those things, we've got the cusp of the 10th, its Lord, the Sun, the part of work, and the first triplicity Lord of the 10th house. So let's go and now look at, I can't believe, you know, like I said, since I got this job, I now have Microsoft Word, and it is so much easier to work with PowerPoint than it was to work with any of the other shit that I was working with. What am I looking for here? Okay, so now we come to Bonatti's work, or his treatise on the parts, and we look at the parts of the 10th. So first, concerning the part of nobility, and of course that's taken to from the Sun to the 19th degree of Aries, which is his exaltation degree by day, and the moon to the 3rd degree of Taurus, which is her exaltation degree. Makes sense? And this was to see if the person themselves would be noble, right? Or with the person themselves, let's see, if it falls in a good place, such as the 10th, and is with benefics, which are well located, of good condition, signifies that the native will attain to honor, nobility, advancement, riches, and the publication of his good reputation, each according to his own degree. So that if the native were one of those fit to be king, he will attain to honors and dignities appropriate for them. So this is an interesting thing, in my opinion, because this is something we might want to be looking at, especially since we're going to be looking at kings today. We're going to be looking at nobility today. But if this part falls in the aforesaid degrees and the nativity is diurnal, Alba Massar said that the signification of those degrees will be the same as the significations of the degree of the ascendant. Isn't that interesting? But if the significators of this part aspected and they are in good connection with it, the native will be the son of him of whom he is attributed. Isn't that interesting? If, however, it is otherwise, he will not be his. Oh, that's right. I remember that they used this to figure out whether or not a person was actually their own child. That is so interesting. There, I think, are 3 parts of kingship, if I'm not mistaken, pars regni. This is the first one, which is Mars to Moon. And they are connected with the Lord of the 10th and the Lord of the Ascendant. The native will be a king or duke, and he will be with rich men who receive his words and heed. And then this is the second one, that's of regni, pars regni, regum, and dispositorum. It is taken by day from Mercury to Mars, and this one, let's see, receiving. This part is extracting from those significators because of the signification for giving, receiving, writing, prohibiting a matter from reaching the consulate, for writing letters, sending them, and receiving the mass, counting money, and clarity of mind have been given to Mercury. And all signification of fear and terror is given to Mars. And therefore, this part was counted from these planets. When the planets and lords are well disposed, blah, 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 the native will be of good mind, easily instructed, and rational, and he will attain the consulship if he is fit for it. So this particular regni, pars regni, talks about how fit for some kind of either office or high command that this person might have. He will be a scribe of kings. It's basically about how skilled, how talented and skilled. Now I'm starting to finally understand these. If he is fit for kingship or day empire, he will attain that. So basically it's aptitude. It looks like this second one is about aptitude. It looks like the first part of kingship is about, will they be wealthy? Will they be in the community of nobility? Will they be noble, be in the community? So nobilitas is about, will they be noble, of a high noble mien or high noble position. The pars regni is, yeah, are they going to get to it? Are they going to actually make it? Pars the second one, Regni Regorum, is all about, do they have what it takes to get there? And then this fourth part is Sun to Saturn. And when it's well disposed and good condition, blah, 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 with the Lord of the 10th house, etc., it signifies kingship for the native. If he is one of those who are fit for kingship, it signifies honor and exaltation of each according to his being. And further, he will be extended and preferred and prevailed over those of his own kind. There's that exceeding others. There's that issue of exceeding others. Now, Masar said that if it's in a sign in which the Lord of the Ascendant or the Lord of the 10th has dignity, it will signify victory for the native over those who contend with him. The same thing happens in revolutions. Mind you, remember that you can use these parts in horary, in electional, in solar returns, and in natal, and in mundane. Although I think mundane has some specific parts for it. And so now we come into different things. The fifth part is of those who are suddenly elevated. The sixth is, what's it called? Those who are known and honored among men or honored men, pars nobilium. The seventh is soldiers and ministers, right? So this would probably represent high-ranking soldiers, generals, and of that nature. The native will be a follower of the king or one of his soldiers, because remember, a king's, what do they call it? They call it his host. A king's host is all of his military officers, generals, military officers, and army. The eighth part of the 10th is the part of kings and what kind of work the native does. This is the part of magistery. And it's taken day or night from Saturn to the moon. So we'll look at maybe a few of these. And Album said that the part signifies kings, honor, and magnificent, and what kind of work the native does, which he does for its own sake, and what profession he will practice, and whether he profits from his profession or not. So Saturn to the moon is how we find that one. Tradesmen, part of tradesmen is the ninth one. This one I think has 14. 10th house, 10th is the part of trade and buying or selling. The 11th part is of the 10th is called the part of work and of a thing which must happen necessarily. The 12th is the part of mothers. It's got 12. I think that's it. No, there are 14. Part of mothers, Venus to moon by day, moon to Venus by night. 13th is the part signifying whether the cause of the kingdom may or may not be. And then the 14th is the part of the death of the mother. All right, so all of these things that we kind of are looking at, we can come to. So someone just gave me, actually, what I'll do first, you gave me LeBron. I'm going to pull up Aretha and Elvis. Here's Aretha. Okay, so Aretha is the Queen of Soul. And she's been named it since the, okay, so first of all, y'all may not know that Aretha Franklin Aretha Franklin became the Queen of Soul in the late 60s. And so her famous song, RESPECT, Respect, that is really the beginning of Aretha Franklin as a soul singer. And it's also the beginning of Aretha Franklin. She changes labels from Columbia to Atlantic, and then she starts doing all of these. She starts doing Respect, I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You, Chain of Fools, all that stuff that she became huge for happens when she switches to Atlantic in 1966 and becomes the Queen of Soul. Prior to that, she was on the Columbia label at the same time as Barbra Streisand. And they were trying to make her into a Barbra Streisand kind of type. They made her sing, show tunes. She did show tunes, she did blues, she did jazz, she did, because she's a gospel related singer, really. So she did gospel related things and folk type stuff that was gospel related without being specifically gospel. She did early R&B, but soul music doesn't really happen until 1966, 1967. Her, Wilson Pickett, Otis Redding, the MJs, I mean MGs or whatever they're called. Like there's a whole genre of people that all of a sudden in the mid 60s, they get loose and funky. And so let's look to see. So 10th house, so wait, actually, let's go back for a second and see what we would look at to understand honors and dignity. Okay, so 10th house. Oh, would somebody do me a favor and write this list in the chat, because I want to be able to look at it when we come to looking at these charts. So we're going to look at the 10th house, its Lord, the part of kingship, which we're going to use the fourth one, its Lord, the almutin of the significator of kingship, the three triplicity lords of the 10th house, the third lord of the triplicity of the 8th, the second of the triplicity of the 11th, and the second of the triplicity of the first. Now, you don't have to write that down, but I am going to go kind of back and forth with it, with this list and what we're looking at. Okay, so the first thing we would look at is the cusp of the 10th and the ruler of the 10th. So the cusp of the 10th is Leo, and the ruler of the 10th is in the 5th house exalted. So already that's kind of a nice thing. Yeah, it's nighttime. So that means that the first triplicity ruler is not this chart, is not this planet. Right, so the first triplicity ruler is this Jupiter. And look at this Jupiter. He's in detriment and he's impeded by Mars. So this is why I've wondered kind of about this triplicity ruler stuff for the 10th house, because what this does then say, though, is that for the second triplicity ruler, which represents the voice of command and its ability to make people do whatever it wants, it would be the sun, which makes perfect sense. And then the durability of it would be the Saturn in Taurus, which also kind of makes sense because she had a very durable career that lasted about, I would say, 25, almost 30 years. Hold on a second. No, not saying that the MC has joy. No, I'm saying that, I'm just specifically kind of looking at that little list of Schörner and looking at all the significations that make up the list. Because here's the thing, remember, it's the three triplicity rulers of Leo are the Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn, and Jupiter would be first, the Sun would be second, and Saturn would be third. Look at how this Jupiter is not in great shape. It's not in great condition. And it's even more screwed over by being with Mars, right? Who's on the bends. Mars is on the bends. He's squaring Rahu and the Rahu-Ketu axis. So, but somehow she was able to have a huge, huge career. Notice also part of fortune in Leo, right? Part of fortune in Leo. Oh, also notice that the ruler of the ascendant is Mars, who's with this Jupiter. Jupiter is a ruler of the second house of the voice. Gemini is a sign of beautiful voice or attractive voice. So those things do make sense, even though the Jupiter and Gemini would not necessarily push this person to the height of their career, to the top of their career, would it? Not in my estimation. But in this one, yes. And notice also that the sun is in the 9th house, from the part of fortune, which is called God, right? And we just talked about how the 9th and the 3rd are king and queen. Now, who rules the 3rd house? Saturn rules the 3rd house, right? So if we're talking about queen, right? Or if we're talking about king for the sun, right? Or the moon. Oh, look, the moon rules the 9th, which is God. So that would make God into goddess, wouldn't it? So if indeed we were going to look at this as a kingship chart using the 9th, we can even see that the 9th house is working. If we're using it as a kingship house for the 10th, then the ruler of the 10th is helping. Interesting. And is anybody aspecting the ruler of the 10th? The sun is trining the part of fortune as well, and in the 9th from the part of fortune, which is a very auspicious place. Interesting. Let's look at LeBron James. Okay. So same thing here. We're looking at the ascendant, I mean, the 10th house, which is Jupiter. Once again, see, this is my point. Look at how this fucking Jupiter is fallen. How is it that this, right? This is my point. Look at how this Jupiter is fallen. Now, Mars is at 4, Jupiter is at 21. So there's not even a real kind of connection. There is a weird mutual reception between them, right? So Mars is in Jupiter's sign and Jupiter is in Mars's exaltation. So there is an exchange, but there's no aspect. Now, who's the first triplicity ruler? First triplicity ruler, its daytime is Venus, and she's in Aquarius, okay? And remember, that's supposed to show you how high the person gets in life. The second triplicity, which is the voice of command, is Mars, who's in the 10th. So this is what I'm starting to believe. Because I've been seeing this in quite a few charts. This thing with the first triplicity ruler doesn't usually fit. Because remember, Layla, we were looking at this with Clarence Thomas last time. And what we found was that the first triplicity ruler wasn't really helping so much, but the second and the third kind of did, especially the third did.
What's first supposed to mean again, Garth?
The first is supposed to mean, hold on a second.
I was trying to think why it might not work in this case.
Okay,
and why
so-
second and third do.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, wait, let's go. I want to go back even further because I want to go back to the one, yeah, the Alcabisi one. So first lord of triplicity of the royal house signifies work and exaltation and the highest station. The second one signifies one's voice and courage in the same. The third signifies its stability and durability. So that's my point. It might be that these triplicity rulers aren't really working at all, right? It could be that maybe it's not working at all. I mean, once again, this does not, in my opinion, indicate high station,
No.
right?
It has occurred to me though, I've noticed when I look at celebrity charts that there is usually a connection between Jupiter and the MC, regardless of essential dignity.
Okay, Jupiter and the MC. Is there a connection between Jupiter and the MC?
And like, does that mean anything?
Well, but first of all, is there a connection?
Well, no, I mean, in the sense of the ruler of the sort of triplicity rulers, there is in this case, right?
But that's not strong enough to really determine, right? So the planets that could determine how the 10th happens would be either the sun or Mars. The sun or Mars. Wait, not the sun or Mars, would be really the sun, only the sun.
Why? Because of the rulership of the 10th?
Because yes, and no exaltation ruler for Leo.
Got it. Okay.
I'm wondering though, but remember what I just said. For 6 years, Aretha stumbled. Columbia didn't really know what to do with her. And even though she was this gigantic talent, there was no such thing as soul music. And so they didn't know what to do with her. They were trying to put her in the heavily string atmosphere type of stuff. They were trying to make her belt, show tunes. So she didn't really know what her place was, so and I think by the time she left Columbia, she was kind of discouraged. So this makes sense on that level, right? The Jupiter and Gemini, it's like, I want to expand, but I can't. But what we do have is we've got this exalted ruler of the 10th who gives us a promise of something that can happen, and who is the second triplicity ruler of the 10th, which represents the voice of command. And we could all say that Aretha Franklin has a very commanding voice.
Yeah. And whatever the third one is, she stuck around, right? It just took a second.
And she stuck around. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not talking specifically about your voice. In this particular case, it's coincidental, right? But basically, it's saying that if Aretha Franklin were to come into your theater today and made demands, would you listen? And absolutely they would.
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely they would. So that's the voice of command. Or,
Okay.
you know, if Aretha comes in and says, you know what, I hate that sign, move it over there. Are you gonna move it? If I come into your theater and I say, I hate that sign, move it, are you gonna move it? No, because I don't have that voice of command. Aretha did. So let's now look at LeBron and see what we come to.
Moderator of works and announcements. Okay.
Moderator, what did you get that? Where were you seeing that? Moderator?
I think that's Lily. I was looking for Al-Kabisi and I on a quick Google and I couldn't find it.
Let's see.
I think this is Lily.
Okay, so Lily said,
I'm just trying to keep it in mind because I just get mixed up. Just like you said, I feel like the having it nearby, so I know kind of what's what is going to be helpful.
yeah. Let's see what it says. Princes, kings, commanders in chief, armies and towns, all sorts of majesty and office and authority, mother's honor, preferment, dignity, office, lawyers, the professions or trade of anyone uses, kingdoms, empires, dukedoms, countries, and that's about it.
Wait, so this is
That's
all
what-
power that you wield as opposed
Yes.
to fame that's thrust upon you. Are
Both.
we making any sort of
Both.
distinction between
Both.
infamy and fame? No, but to me that's like very different.
But remember, it was still included because one of the parts was those who are elevated suddenly.
Yeah. Okay, I feel you on that.
Okay.
Sorry,
and
I don't
also-
mean to distract you with the theory. I'm just like trying to wrap my head around this.
No, it's not a distraction at all. If anything, it's a clarification. What you're doing is
Thank you.
helping us to clarify. You're not distracting at all.
Thanks,
Um,
Antoine. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah, no, absolutely. These are important. These things are so important. These what sometimes you might think is a distraction is, and you know, you did it early. You did it in another one, and you apologized, and I was like, no, this is one of the best things that someone could be doing. We need this kind of clarification because I promise you, someone else with us here right now, or someone listening to the video, feels the same way you do, and you just helped. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the thing is that like with a bunch of other things, like the seventh house, it has a bunch of things that don't seem to be connected. It has fame, it has infamy, it has being suddenly elevated, it has the voice of command, it has being being in an office or holding an office, it has being a king, it has running a kingdom, it has being an emperor, it has mom.
It does have mom, believe me.
Right?
I
Has
know.
all
I
these-
got moon in the 10th.
Oh, all right. So all of these things, right? It has all these different things.
I like it. No, I like it. I'm just thinking because for whatever reason, my brain has been thinking about Kim Kardashian's natal chart. And I'm by no means a fan. If anything, I think they're annoying. But I would say she's a very good example of someone who became famous through shall we say, not particularly for a talent and then leveraged it. I'm wondering if you can see the difference between that and between someone who, no offense to Kim, legitimately has talent, like in Aretha.
Except Kardashian is American nobility.
Yeah, I guess that too, because she comes from this famous lawyer. It's true. That's true.
She's royalty. She's
my bad.
Royalty.
Yep.
The Kardashians
Totally
are American royalty. So
Ugh,
once again,
like it or not.
right, exactly. So that's why kings are born.
Yeah.
You have to be born. You have to be a descendant of a king to be a monarch. You have to be a descendant of a monarch to be a monarch. Right? And so same thing, Kim Kardashian is a descendant of an American monarch. So I think that's the difference. So really you're asking how do we tell the difference between someone who has come to because the thing is, when Aretha Franklin goes to England, Prince Charles and Queen Elizabeth are in the fucking audience.
Oh my God. She really is commanding.
Get it? So who's queen? At what is it? Avery Mountain Hall or whatever, whatever the Royal Albert Hall, when Aretha is at Royal Albert Hall, who is really queen? Is it Elizabeth? for the 2 hours that Aretha is singing at Royal Albert Hall and Queen Elizabeth and Prince Charles are in the audience, Aretha is queen. So they're the people who, as a result of exceeding all others in their majesty, become kings and queens, or attain the same level, the same height and dignity of a king. Luciano Pavarotti, Placido Domingo, Michael Jackson. Who else can we think of? So, Elvis Presley, any of the most famous people in the world. The fucking ass Donald Trump. Right? So that's really what we're talking about, is who gets elevated, not necessarily how. I mean, can the 10th house tell us how? Certainly this particular chart isn't really telling. And see, this is my issue with the 10th house, with the 10th house ruler, is it never fucking tells you. Does this tell you what kind of work she does? Jupiter and Gemini with Mars, the Mars-Jupiter does that tell you that this person is a musician, a singer?
No, wait, but 10th house ruler for Aretha is Sun, isn't it? Or am I misreading?
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. But does that?
No, it shows dignity. It shows fifth house. Can you relate that to be like you go out to listen to music? I don't think so. Entertainment. Like maybe, but it's a big fucking stretch. Excuse my language.
You're right.
Like, you're not just gonna get there from just that.
Exactly. I agree. I completely agree with you. So let's look at King James. So his 10th house is Jupiter, who is fallen in the 8th house, and not he's under the rays of the sun. The sun is moving towards him. Now, does that sound like an exalted career?
No,
not at all. Does that sound like a person who's fast and can jump high? Not at all.
Mm-mm.
So this is the reason why when people say, or Pisces on the midheaven. See, I remember I just told you I was on Reddit and somebody said, oh, you have Aries on the midheaven, you should do this for a career. Pisces on the midheaven, does that mean sports?
No, I would say almost like, not like the opposite, but it really doesn't.
No, Mars may.
I think Mars does. I also think too, I've noticed more with fighters charts, you see Mars in bad condition. And Pisces is not like detriment or fallen, but it's not like a happy positioning. And sometimes that can lead the native to like almost overcompensate.
To be honest with you, I disagree that it's not a good position for it, because it is a triplicity. And at certain points, Mars ends up having as many points as Venus. Like when in a certain part of Pisces,
in the like degrees,
Mars can be the Almutin. Mars can be the Almutin of Pisces.
Okay, let me read. I'm gonna look at the degree. I'm curious. I will look and see how many points it has at.
Yeah, let me get my dignity chart too, and then we'll look at that, because I remembered noticing that. a while ago, was that if Mars is in a certain part of Pisces and it's nighttime, especially if it's nighttime, then Mars could almost be the Almutin, because he's got like 6 or 7 points.
It's sometimes like what happens in Libra with Saturn. I've seen that.
Yes, exactly. Same thing with Saturn. If it's daytime and he's got the triplicity and he's got the term.
Yeah, totally.
Then you're absolutely right. Then he'll have more, then he will outdo Venus. Okay, so Mars in Pisces, so between 19 and 28 Pisces, Mars will have as many, especially if it's nighttime, Mars will have as many points as Jupiter. Matter of fact, Mars will have more points than Jupiter, because he'll have term and face. So Mars can get 6 points when he is between 20 and 28. Which means that he then, if it's nighttime, can be the Almutin of Pisces. So I just wanted to clarify that one little thing.
Amazing. I like that a lot.
But, and this might, what degree is he? He's early.
It looks like he's at 4 or
4
something like
degrees.
that.
Yeah, 4. So he's
Okay.
early. So he's not the almutant of this sign. Right. But, and it's daytime. So Venus has a lot of power in this sign right now. She's got the domicile, she's got the exaltation, and she's got the first 12 degrees of Pisces. So
How close is the Venus then to that midheaven? Could that be like even
not
without
that
a sun?
close.
Yeah,
Not
not
close
close
enough.
enough. Okay, fair enough.
I mean, it's within 5 degrees, but it's not in the same sign. So I think it's close enough that it's, it's giving some power, but because it's not in the same sign, it's not really, but I think more than that, it shows how much influence she has. Now, she is trining the ascendant.
Okay.
But the ruler of the ascendant is the Mercury at 18 degree, in the 18th degree of Sagittarius. And he is he, no, he's not applying to the Mars. Is what's going on with the moon? She's at 16. So there's a trine between the moon and Mercury. But is there anything that shows that there could possibly be kingship, that there could be, I think the only thing that it points to is Mars.
Yeah. I also see a pretty tight square between Venus in a Saturn sign with Saturn, but I don't really think that means, I don't know what that means in this chart, especially since it's kind of pushing detriment, at least towards Venus, right?
Right.
That's not good.
In my opinion, this whole chart to me looks like someone who is deadly serious about whatever he does.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
Super serious, super serious, and disciplined, serious, disciplined, focused is what this feels like. And eye on the prize. This is an eye on the prize person who will do whatever is necessary, right? Because the Mars is action. The Mars is what we will do.
I think that's what the bio says too, right? I read some interview about him and like his daughter, and he was like trying to sort of pass on his work ethic, and he trains and stuff like this crazy amount. Like he's very dedicated. He was, excuse me, may he rest in peace.
LeBron James is dead?
I thought he was dead.
No, LeBron James is still alive. I'm almost positive.
Oh, you're right. My bad. I was thinking of
Magic Johnson?
No.
Magic
Who's the guy who died in the
Kobe
helicopter? Jesus Christ. I know nothing about basketball players.
That's Kobe Bryant.
Kobe
Bryant.
Bryant, thank you.
I do apologize. He
Thank
also
you.
had a great work ethic.
Yeah, I don't know basketball very much either. I was just thinking of people who've been nicknamed king because that basically, see, when you're nicknamed something, that's a 10th house thing. That's how you're known as opposed to who you are. My name is Antoine, but if everybody calls me Twanny, my best friend calls me Twanny. So if everybody calls me Twanny, that's my 10th house identity. So
that nickname.
So somehow this Mars, it looks like, because remember, Mars is the second triplicity ruler, which represents the voice of command. And then the durability is going to be this moon. And note, it's an immovable sign. So of course, that makes perfect sense for an athlete where things can change because, athletes tend to age out very quickly. And he's already, how old is he? He's in his 30s somewhere. Oh, hell, he's 38. So he should be done playing very soon. Which shows kind of the lack of durability. Once again, in my opinion, the first triplicity ruler doesn't really show what we're asking for. Now, mind you, we're supposed to be using it in tandem with other things. We should never be just looking at that thing. But in this case, we've got both the Venus and the Jupiter in Saturn signs. The Venus, as you mentioned, is applying to the Saturn. Is it applying? Yeah, it's applying. Yeah. Oh, no, just leaving.
Yeah, like a 0 degree, very tight, even if
so
separating.
Super degrees separated, super tight separation. So that is really, who's the part of fortune? Who rules the part of fortune in this chart? Let's see. It's daytime, 9 to 16. So 90 plus 7, forward 90, plus 7. So 27 plus 7 is 34. 4 degrees of Libra. Venus and Saturn are the rulers of the part of fortune.
Okay. Okay. That will show some discipline then, because
Makes
Venus is
sense.
on board. Yeah.
Makes sense now. Which means then that the moon is the ruler of the 10th from the part of fortune. Look, it's in the 11th.
And it's also Mars, though. It's a Mars ruled moon.
It is. That's right. So that brings us back to the Mars in the 10th, in the natural 10th. And then what about the 9th? So the Mercury is the ruler of the 9th, and he's in the sign of the 7th. So he's kind of in the 7th. So he's kind of angular. So either way, you know, this person, what I think is that this person is a learner. This person is really, really into learning and processing information.
Hey, Garth, I'm sorry. How is Mercury ruler of the 9th? I apologize. I didn't
Ninth for the
catch
part
that.
of fortune. Ninth for the
Ninth from part of fortune. Okay, thank you.
Ninth of the part of fortune. So yeah, so this person's into learning. Notice that the Venus is in the 9th. This person is into the information, into the knowledge, into the wisdom. I bet if we got to know LeBron, he would talk about some coach or some blah, blah, blah that he met, that there's a wisdom tradition. This guy's got a guru, I promise you. This guy's got a person who was like a guru to him and who gave him the secrets, the wisdom of basketball. He was obviously already really, really, really talented. Now, can we see that? I think the talent, on some level, in my opinion, I think the talent in this chart is the ability to process information and put it into physical practice through action. He just happened to do it with sports. He could have been a dancer. If he had been a dancer, he would have done it through that or something else. But that's what I think is this person's talent. And that's specifically connected to the moon Mercury trine. It has nothing to do with any of the 10th house stuff.
So I quickly Googled it, and one of the first hits is 21 people who made LeBron James the man he is today. And it mentions a few different mentors. And it also says that he finds it his own responsibility to mentor young players.
So the mentorship is the transference of wisdom.
Yeah.
Right? It's the transmittal of wisdom from person to person. So yes. So this person is about learning, is about taking in the information, putting it into practice, and physically enacting, physically practicing, putting this into physical practice and complete discipline, total seriousness and total discipline. All of which have made him into a king. But it's not, but once again, we cannot look at the ruler of the 10th house and figure out what this person does for a living, period. We cannot look at the sign and figure it out. As a matter of fact, yeah, I'm going to stop it there. As a matter of fact, let's go to Elvis, the king of rock and roll. And then we'll go to some other kings and queens. And then I have a chart that's called, it's called Successful but Miserable. And I thought we'd pick that one. Okay, king of rock and roll, another Mars in the 10th. Remember, we saw that Mars in the 10th is a good thing for the 10th house. Right? Remember, Mars was the co-ruler of the 10th as per Scherner. So Mars in the 10th means that you're going to act. You're going to take things into action. You're going to put things into action. Even here with it in detriment, Libra is a sign of aesthetics, of artistic, aesthetic, music and art and all of that stuff. So it makes perfect sense. Even though Mercury is on the cusp of Virgo is on the cusp of the 10th. So does that show us what kind of thing he did for a living? No, But look, we've got the part of fortune in Libra with the Mars. That gives us an idea. And note how the Venus is with the Mercury and the Sun, who rules the ninth. So now we've got the ruler of the 10th and the ruler of the part of fortune together. And Mercury Venus is music and the arts and performance and dance and entertainment. Remember, Elvis Presley, what is it that he became so famous for in the very beginning? Or what was he infamous for?
Zero idea, honestly.
He was famous / infamous for vulgar dancing, for the way that he moved his hips.
I know he was kind of a ladies' man too. He had that. I want to look almost in his chart. Oh, never mind, it's not there. But I would look to see like a Moon Venus situation, because he was like really, because he was very sort of like sexual.
We're looking at his chart right now.
Eating issues. No, I'm saying I don't see it. I don't see a connection. They're one sign. Oh no, look at that. Wait, 1, 2. No, not really.
Did you say did he have like an eating disorder?
I don't know if I would say eating disorder, but wasn't he known for like really rich food he ate later in life?
He was obsessed with, I remember he like had to have the tuna fish sandwich. Like I remember he was really specific about foods he would not eat. I remember that aspect about him. But and also how fat he got, but he got really fat because of all the drugs he was doing and how they would make him hungry and how he would binge eat and drink and whatever else. So
yeah, to me though, those are a part and parcel, man. Like you're not in control of your appetites.
So who would we be looking at for that?
Well, that's why I was looking at Moon and Venus and maybe Jupiter thrown in there. I don't see what I was like looking to see, but maybe you have a better handle on this.
Well, Moon and Venus, Moon is in Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter and Venus.
Okay.
Right? And then Venus is with Mercury, who's the ruler of the 5th. Mars is the ruler of the 5th house, who's in the 10th. So the ruler of the 5th is in the 10th in Libra.
Known for that, and also again in a Venus ruled sign.
And a Venus ruled sign. Venus is also with the ruler of the 7th house.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, Mercury is young kids. Remember, Lisa Presley was 14, 15, 16 when he married her?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
That was very common. Back in the 50s, Jerry Lee Lewis married his 13-year-old cousin. Elvis Presley married his 16-year-old, married Lisa Presley when she was 16. We've got some of these black, I think Jackie Wilson, or he married a 16 or 14 or 15-year-old. You had a bunch of people doing that kind of shit in the fucking 50s.
I mean, I think people still do it. They just keep it on the DL because they're not supposed
to. Definitely still do it. Notice also the Saturn is trining the part of fortune. I like that. But this, in my opinion, shows things a little bit more, because we've got the Mercury Venus, which shows that this person is probably interested in performance of some sort. It's with the Sun, which is not necessarily good for it, but the Sun, remember, represents fame. So
and you call the second house like the voice, right?
The second house is the voice. That's absolutely right. And the ruler of the second house is in Aquarius, which is a sign of attractive voice.
Wait, what? Really?
All of the air signs are called signs of attractive.
Oh my God, that's why Libra and Gemini. Okay, I'm with you now. I'm with you.
All of the air signs and Virgo are signs of attractive voice. The human signs are the air signs and Virgo, and they're all signs also of they're called rational, and they're called signs of attractive voice. So makes perfect sense. And then the fact that the ruler of the 10th is in the 2nd, which represents the voice. Mercury also, remember, is the significator for the voice, is the natural significator for the voice. And it's the ruler of the 10th. So this one's a little bit more. Oh, wait, who is the first triplicity ruler? Venus. No, it's nighttime. The moon is the first triplicity ruler, which would represent the work that they're doing, or how high they go. Once again, it doesn't show up. But then the next one is Venus, representing the voice of command, and sure enough, it's working.
Well, so it's Moon in Pisces is not exactly exalted, but I don't know. Ruled by Jupiter in Scorpio.
But come on, that's not strong enough. It's only
I'm
interesting.
not saying it's strong. I'm saying he was also known for his prolific groin activity.
The groin is what part of the body? The groin is what part of the chart?
Eighth house.
Oh, boom. I didn't even see that. I stand corrected. I see what you're saying. Except, but remember, the first triplicity ruler is supposed to be telling us how high in life they're supposed to go.
Oh yeah, so I guess him effing around is not really the height of his career. Point
No,
taken.
yeah, no. I mean, as a matter of fact, and it didn't last that long, right? The notoriety, that was only 1 year or 2 years where he was notorious for that. But that was because when he showed up on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1955 or 56, whenever he did his first appearance, they only showed him from the waist up because they were so scandalized by what he was doing with his hips.
Oh my God, really? Wait, that's nuts.
Think 1955, there were still sodomy laws.
Yeah, totally. No, yeah, I got you. And I my understanding of Elvis Presley is very limited and from like my own strange point of view, because I used to work in like food criticism. And there's a pretty like well-known food critic who got on the map for having had sex with Elvis Presley when she was younger and writing about it. Yeah. And so I always thought of him as this like very sexual guy.
Well, I mean, remember, he may or may not have been sexual. This is a really interesting point, because I was reading about, I was looking at the charts of some of the famous actors, and I was looking. I know what it was. I was looking to see, like, there's actors who have been kind of who have been rumored to be bisexual or gay, and Paul Newman is one of them. Burt Lancaster is one, and Errol Flynn is one. And so there was an article I read about how Errol Flynn used to live with David Niven, who was another famous actor of that time period. They were roomers together. They were drunks and they were womanizers, and so they bought a home. They rented a house together, and they talk about there was a time when I guess the ladies had left, and Errol Flynn hit on David Niven. And they couldn't believe it. Why did I bring that point up? Oh, it was because I was looking at what made me think about it was what fame gives you access to, and what is that thing that you want access to that fame gives you, right? So fame gives us access to anything we want, but we all don't want the same thing. Like,
yeah,
right?
That's amazing. Like what you choose once you have that, like, all access pass is very like telling. Yeah,
exactly. So for instance, in the case of somebody like a Brad Pitt or a Robert De Niro, they just started business after business after business. I mean,
yeah, there's a lot of cap, or I forget what it is, but I've looked at Brad Pitt's chart, and he's very like, the first word that came to mind was like materialistic.
Material, fully, and also that all business, materialistic, completely, that everything was being done as a business. If I'm not mistaken, Brad Pitt was one of the first people to make his name an incorporation, to incorporate his name.
Dude, that's really cool.
He's Brad Pitt,
really, really fucking cool.
Right. So that's because he's got that stellium in Capricorn in the second, or in Aquarius in the second. It's Cap rising, or it's either Sag rising or Cap rising, and stellium in the second. Brad Pitt was one of the main charts that I worked with when I was first starting to work with the part of fortune as an ascendant, and all my stuff with finding fame. He was one of my favorite charts to look at, because he wasn't a typical. It was one that it fit everything I wanted, but it didn't look typical like a lot of the other charts did.
Wait, speaking of which, if you look at this chart, 1, 2, 3, what is it? The fourth from the part of fortune is this stellium in Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? I don't know. I can't read this the way you do. Fourth from there, like.
Why did that bring your attention to that? What?
Because you just started talking about part of fortune. I feel like it's something I don't take into account very often. But I'm not reading it naturally. I'm sorry, because it's Libra. 1, 2,
You're right, it's
3. It is fourth. Okay, yeah.
Fourth. It's the fourth. Well, it's in an angle from the part of fortune.
Okay. Yes, dude. Yes.
So that's the most important thing. It's in an angle from the part of fortune, so it can advance, and it's in a succeeding from the ascendant, so it's in a place of advancement. then it's also with the ruler of the 10th house.
Could you read fourth house significations to be like, what didn't he make his own like amusement park? Like real
Great
estate
Plan.
that was like,
Isn't that
yeah.
Great Plan? I thought that was made for him after he died.
Okay, maybe. Like I said, I don't know much about all
I mean,
this.
I'm not a fan of Elvis Presley. I mean, and so I'm not a fan of rock and roll. I'm not a fan of Elvis Presley, so I don't really follow. I don't follow these rock singers.
Oh, I love rock and roll, but I'm more like Jimi Hendrix leaning than Presley.
Oh, see, yeah, but I'm not even. You know, I mean, I can tolerate, you know, Jim. I don't really like the genre of rock and roll very much at all. But Elvis Presley was the king of rock and roll, and we're talking about kingship and kingdoms, etc.
Totally.
You know, so that's why
I got you.
And you know, I know enough. I mean, I know enough about him because I mean, I'm into music, so I tend to know. You know, I tend to know about, you know, all our musical people, but you know, the rock and roll people, I don't really follow their biographies as closely as I do, you know, the jazz people or the jazz people or the opera people or, you know, some of these other people that you've seen me
The
talk.
soul people. We'll take Aretha.
Yeah. Love. So yeah, you see, because I grew up with soul music and, you know, so I know all those people and know all that stuff going on with them. And then I got into opera and jazz when I was a teenager. And so I know all that stuff, you know, so, but I've always hated rock and roll. So
I have this theory that what you're into prior to say 20 years old is what you're into musically, period. And I don't know if there's any astrological reason for this, but I fully believe this.
You mean what you're into musically before you're 20?
Yeah, the genre. I'm not saying you can't develop interest in something
18.
else.
I'd say
even before 18. Yeah, but it's not going to hit you the same way it did the music that you were into in that age.
Oh, dude, there is nothing like being 14 and discovering music.
Yeah, totally agree.
There is nothing like that's where we learn how to use music as our personal mantra, as our soundtrack. That's how we at 14 is where we really start. Music becomes our soundtrack. We start learning how to use music as our soundtrack.
Yeah.
Excellent point. Okay, so what I thought I would do next, unless there are any questions about this stuff, is I would go to, I've got a bunch of charts of kings. And I've got, not only do I have charts of kings, but I have charts of siblings, some of whom became king and some of whom did not. And so I just thought, I've got some, and I've got noble people. I've got Lorenzo de' Medici here and his brother Cosimo, or was that his dad? I think it was it might have been his uncle or his dad. I think Lorenzo, social relationship, Strozzi, Leone, Fernando, Filippo. No, okay. So I think it's his father or it's either his, Cosimo's after Lorenzo. Oh, so Lorenzo is Cosimo's father or grandfather or something, or brother. Okay.
Oh my God, I love that because he gives birth to the world.
Right. So the de' Medicis. So the de' Medici family are one of the most important Italian dynasties of the Renaissance. So when we think about the Italian Renaissance and we think about Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, we have to also talk about the Medicis, because where was Michelangelo stationed? Where did he live? Where was he born and raised? Anybody know? Florence, Italy, which is where this Lorenzo de' Medici was born. Firenze, Florence was the kingdom of the Medicis, ultimately.
And the artistic center of the Renaissance.
Artistic center of the Renaissance, and it's because of the Medicis.
Yeah, totally. Patronage back then, big fucking deal.
Absolutely. And here's the other thing. It's also believed that one of the early ancestors of Lorenzo was one of the first people to bring in Guido Bonatti to Europe.
Oh, dude.
And to bring
his books
to bring his books to Europe and to have them and to have a lot of these things, these Islamic books translated. See, Frederick the Great, the Holy Roman Emperor in the late 13th century, is really the beginning of all of that, because he was this great scholar. And he's involved, I think, in the Third Crusade. And so when he goes over to get involved in the Third Crusade, he's not interested in the crusade. He's interested in the cross-cultural aspect of everything. And so he ends up creating this friendship, like this friendly prisonership with the caliph in Persia, and he brings him over and all of his court over, and all of the information and all of these books and all of this wisdom. It's Frederick the Great that really started it, that really starts this influx of Islamic information into Europe. And then after that, around that same time, then one of the Medici ancestors also starts bringing that. Now remember, Guido Bonatti is in Spain. He can't live in Rome. He can't live in Italy because astrology will get him killed. But the Medicis, Frederick the Great, all these people from the 13th century, we're not talking about Lorenzo, but his distant ancestors, they start bringing that stuff in and start translating stuff into Latin, etc. So by the time that we get to the 15th century, the Medicis are ready. The Medicis are ready to turn Florence into this amazing place. And notice the year that Lorenzo de' Medici is born, 1492, right? That's a very important year.
That was the first thing I wrote down. I was going to ask you about this later, is if you ever looked at the astrology of that year, because a lot of stuff happened. I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah, it would be a nice idea.
Discovery of the US. Yeah.
When we look at mundane, that might be a good thing to do. And especially,
I think, yeah.
1492 in Spain, 1492 in not just Spain, but in Rome, because in 1492, the second Spanish Pope ever became was elected, was the second Spaniard ever became Pope. There have only been 2 Spanish popes in the entire history of the papacy. And the first one,
yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
And the first one in 1492. I mean, second one in 1492. The first one was his
Spanish
uncle
Pope.
in the 14th.
Okay.
So Alexander VI, who is a Borgia. So you've heard of Lucrezia Borgia? So
Yeah.
her father, Rodrigo Borgia, is her father, and he was Pope Alexander VI. So we're going to look at him too, because popes are monarchs.
Yeah, they are.
Right?
Yeah.
So what do we see on the 10th cusp?
Look at Mercury.
Mercury in Libra. The arts, and look at Mercury as the ruler of the 9th. Wisdom and arts. Arts and letters. Arts and letters. He was called Lorenzo the Great. Look at how Jupiter is in Leo.
What shows like patronage? I mean, I guess that shows his interest in artwork.
Right, 11th house, and look at how
11th. Okay.
The ruler of the 1st is with the ruler of the 11th.
Yes. So he's a patron. That's who he is.
Mm-hmm. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at some of these parts. I want to look at the part of nobility. Because remember what it says is if it's in good shape, and if it's diurnal, it says, wait. Oh, fuck. It said something nice. If it's in good shape, the native will attain to honor, nobility, advancement. But where was the one that it said that the person will be a noble? The person will be a nobleman. Pars regni. If they're connected with the Lord of the 10th, the native will be king or duke, and he will be with rich men. So let's look at that one. It's Mars to Moon by day.
Wait, but isn't Lord of the 10th Venus?
Yeah, but it's if the ruler of the part.
Oh, okay, got it. Sorry.
Venus. Or I thought Virgo is on the cusp of the 10th.
I effed it up twice.
So we need to be with Mercury. So we're looking for, what is it? Mars to Moon. Okay, Mars to Moon. So Mars is at 10 Leo and Moon is at 15 Gemini. So Mars going backward 60 and forward 5. Backward 60 to Libra, forward 5 to 18. Meaning that the Mercury is on this part. This Mercury that we see here on the cusp is also on this part of kingship, this part regni. Now, it's not with the ruler of the 10th, but notice that Venus, but it's in the 10th. So it's not with the ruler of the 10th, but it's in the 10th, which gives us a good idea that it's going to be kind of what they say. What did they say anything else about it? And if the part and its lord are of good condition and they are connected with the lord of the 10th and the lord of the ascendant, is what he said. So it really needs to be almost all of those things. Is it connected to the lord of the ascendant? Now remember, it's Venus. It's Venus is the ruler of this part. So Venus is at 10 degrees of Scorpio. Jupiter is at 5 degrees of Leo. Mars is at 10 degrees of Scorpio, 10 degrees of Leo. So there's an exact square between Venus and Mars. Mars rules the 11th, and Venus is the ruler of the 10th and the part of kingship. So even though there's a square, it's with the square, and you've got this Mercury who's the ruler of the 9th on the part of kingship. So I think that definitely, we can definitely see that there's, and look at the moon on the cusp of the 7th in Gemini. This person was really, really interested in wisdom and in knowledge. This person was super, super interested in knowledge. And you're right, Venus is the ruler of the 7th, the ruler of the 10th, rather. You were right. Okay, so that is Lorenzo. Now, one of Lorenzo's children became Pope. See if we can find it.
Back then, that wasn't, I mean, maybe even now, it's like, it's not just like a religious thing. It's like a position of power, maybe even political to a certain extent.
Even more so back then.
Yeah.
More so.
Like, no, I feel you. Like that is 10th housey, even though I feel like we tend to think of it as 9th housey.
That is, yeah. That is, well, the thing is that like I said, especially the Renaissance popes, Now, the trajectory of the papacy goes from basically converting Europe to Catholicism up until maybe the 11th century. I think Lithuania is the last country to be converted to Catholicism, and it's now one of the most Catholic countries in Europe. And so after we get out of that period of converting all of Europe, then the papacy leaves Rome in the 14th century. So the height of the papacy is really between like 1199 and 1300. That's really the height of the papacy. That's where the Pope, as a matter of fact, have you ever heard of the Grimm story, The Fisherman and His Wife? Anybody ever heard of that story?
No, me suena, but I don't know.
Okay, so you'll probably, when I start to relate the story, you'll probably understand. So this fisherman goes down to the sea and he catches this really big, beautiful fish. And as he's about to bring him out, the fish says, "Please don't take me and kill me. Throw me back into the water. I'll give you anything you want. I'll give you whatever wish you want. I'll give you however many wishes you want and whatever you want." And he goes, "Well, okay, the fisherman was poor. So he says, "Well, I'd like to have a nicer cottage where I live." So he throws him back in. He goes, "Go home. You have the cottage that you want." He goes home. His wife says, "Oh my God, look at this beautiful new cottage we have." And he says, "Well, guess what happened? I met this fish, and the fish gave us a wish." And she said, "Well, why the fuck did you wish for a cottage? Go back and tell him we want a mansion." So he goes back and he says, "Hey, fish, are you there?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "My wife wants a mansion." He goes, "Go back. You have a mansion." He goes back there. He says, she goes, "Well, now that we have a mansion, tell him that I want to be the head of state." He goes back. He goes back. The fish says, "Go home. She's head of state." She goes, "Tell him I want to be queen. I want to be king." He goes back to the fish. The fish says, "Go home. She's king." The last thing she says is, "Tell him I want to be Pope." She gets to be Pope. Then she says, "I want to be God," or something like that. And he goes, "Go home. You go back to the hovel that you first had." So it's this whole kind of morality story about not being satisfied with what we get. But my point in it is that all of these Grimm's fairy tales come from the 13th and 14th century, when the papacy was the highest in the land.
Totally.
And that ends in the 14th century when the papacy goes to France for what they call the Babylonian captivity, which lasts about 100 years. They come back to Rome, and then there's this whole schism and all these schisms.
It's like where they have the anti-pope and the pope and all that
That's
stuff.
right. So that's the Western Schism in the 1370s, when there's a French pope and there's an Italian pope, and they're fighting against each other, and certain countries are pledging allegiance to one, and another country is pledging allegiance to another. and then in 1406, with the Council of Pisa, they finally say, okay, fuck this shit. Neither of these popes are any good. We're gonna create our own pope, but neither of them will give up the papacy. So you got 3 fucking popes. So, and see, nobody ever talks about this. Nobody talks about the pure nonsense that the Roman Catholic Church involved itself in for almost 100 years. But after that period, it becomes this, that's when you have your first bequeathments to Rome. And see, that's when the papacy starts to descend. So now we're in the period where the papacy decides to take up, to be patrons of Rome, and where they start to show the kind of wealth of being Renaissance kings. So now we're back to the fact that a pope is a monarch. And especially the Renaissance popes acted as European monarchs, more as monarchs than as spiritual leaders. More as monarchs than as spiritual leaders. So let's look at this. So notice that the sun is in the 9th. And sun is the exaltation ruler of the ascendant. The ruler of the 9th is Jupiter, who's in the 11th. Which is his joy. So we've got sun in joy, we've got Jupiter in joy. Once again, we've got this Mercury on the midheaven, which we also had for Lorenzo. So what I'm wondering is, what shows this person is a king? Notice that the ruler of it's either a pope or a king. Notice that Saturn and Jupiter are opposing each other. The ruler of the 9th and the 10th, 11 and 7. Now, one of the things that I remembered about Pope Leo is that he was one of the worst popes of the Renaissance period, and he was pope in 1517. What happened in 1517? In 1517, Martin Luther, October 31st, 1517, Martin Luther, what did he do? He stuck those his 99 theses or whatever, his 99 list of 99 things onto the chapel in Wittgenstein. And that's the birth of Lutheranism. And it's all as a result of the indulgences that were being, because what was happening was, in order for people to, there's all these penances that you have to do, but you could get forgiven for a penance by paying money. And so it became this huge thing where people were paying money to get forgiven. Kind of, when you go to a fucking confession now and they say, okay, say 3 Hail Marys, back then it was put 20 ducats in and, God will forgive you. And this was an affront to so many people. This was widespread all over Europe. Completely mercenary. And it was mostly because these popes were in wars with other monarchs over territory. So they were consistently doing this indulgence grift in order to raise money for more wars. Thus, and it was especially bad during Pope Leo's time. And that's what happened. And so that's how basically Lutheranism started under Leo. He supposedly was a terrible administrator. He was obsessed with music. All he ever wanted to do was listen to music. He had the Sistine Chapel come into his chambers and sing for him all day long. Like, he didn't want to do anything. And he was gay. He was totally into eating and eating and sex and all that stuff. He was not at all into the actual work of the papacy. Can we see that somewhere? Venus in the 9th, that's certainly the Venus with the sun, and then this Jupiter-Saturn opposition. Now, he was a Medici, so that's why he became Pope. It was the Medici's turn. It wasn't because he was the most, he wasn't like Rodrigo Borgia, who he had been the vicar. He had been the vicar for 30 years, and then finally acceded to Pope. But this guy was just a Medici, and a Medici that was made a cardinal, like they would do with all kinds of people, and then just kind of made Pope because the Medicis hadn't been Pope yet, and it showed. So we've got some things that show that, yeah, there could be some kingship stuff going on here, but it's really about religion. Sun in the ninth, Jupiter in the 11th, ruler of the ninth and the 11th, ruler of the fifth and the ninth, the son of fame and religion in the ninth, the ruler of the 11th, of the 10th and the 11th and the fifth. And with that opposition, and notice that it's Saturn in retrograde, even with the Mercury there, right? So because he was a highly intelligent person, but he was not interested in he wasn't interested in the job, in the actual administration of the job. And as a result, he let things go really, really bad. And look at how Moon and Mercury, Moon and Gemini, just like Lorenzo, Mercury on the midheaven, just like Lorenzo. So what was it? It's daytime, Mars to Moon. Mars 17 Virgo to Moon. 13.
Yeah.
Okay, so back 90 minus 4. Back 90 Capricorn minus 4. 19 Capricorn or 20 Capricorn. So isn't that interesting? Once again, the Mercury is on that part of Regni. That part of Regni is in the 10th house, just like Lorenzo. But in this case, it's this retrograde Saturn in detriment opposing this Jupiter, who's the ruler of the ninth. So this does connect the ninth and the 10th. And then the sun in the ninth shows that there's possibly, and there's some kind of issue with either religion or divination or things of that nature. And I think he was also interested. By this time, astrology is considered one of the most important natural sciences in Europe, right? So within that 300-year period between when Bonatti could have been killed for doing astrology and now, astrology is huge, and it's being practiced all over Europe, and the popes themselves are practicing it. All right, so that's these two Medicis. And this is Catherine de' Medici. So she's one of the most powerful women of all time in Renaissance Europe. And once again, and she is, I guess, she's probably she's the niece of Leo X. Taurus rising with Capricorn on the ascendant. Look, we've got the Saturn. And this one was extremely practical, extremely business-minded, administrative-minded in a way that her uncle, the Pope, never was. Catherine de' Medici was one of the most accomplished people in Europe at the time. And so we've got the Saturn, the ruler of the 10th and the 10th. Where's that Mars to Moon thing? Mars to Moon, 18 to 10. So once again, 90 is a daytime. So Mars going forward, okay, going forward to and back 8. Okay, so forward 90 and back 8. So forward, okay, so it'd be about 7 degrees of Leo. And note how we've got that planet that rules that part of kingship with the ruler of the ascendant. And is there a connection between the sun and Saturn? Sun's at 1, Saturn is at 22, so not necessarily. But what about between Venus and Saturn? Venus is at 8, so not necessarily. Okay.
There's another opposition there too, but this time it's between Mars in fall and Saturn in exaltation right on midheaven.
You're right, 1832 and Saturn at 22.6. Yeah, you're right. It's even applying, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, I don't know what it means, but it struck out to me.
More than well, I always think of Mars and Saturn as a calamity of some sort, and it's happening essentially close to the 4th and 10th houses. So it would probably involve her parents.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of biographical information. Let's see what they tell us. She was the only daughter of Lorenzo de' Medici and Madeleine de la Tour. Okay. Venetian envoy described Catherine as small in stature, blah, 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 blah. Henry and Catherine had 10 children. Oh, she was married to Henry VI, wasn't she, or something like that? Yeah, 14. Henry, second son of King Francis and Queen Claude. She had lots and lots of children. She bore King Charles the Ninth.
Abnormal relationship and affection with her sons.
Ooh.
Look at that last line of the biography. Held power through sons for whom some accounts say she had an abnormal relationship and affection. I mean, I don't know if you can see that in astrology. I'm just telling you shit that I find interesting.
Let's see. I love that. I'm so glad you caught that, because we would be looking at what's going on with the ruler of the fifth and the ruler of the first. Ruler of the fifth is Sun. Ruler of the first is Venus.
They're right there.
Right together.
Right there.
Right together. So yes, there'd be a unhealthy attachment. That might be we could say that with the combustion might manifest itself as an unhealthy attachment. And that really Catherine probably should have been the monarch. And so she used her children in order to work that out.
Yes. Sorry, I realized I was nodding and I realized you were not going to see that I grew.
No problem. Any questions about anything so far? Before I kind of move on, I want to move on to one of the Indian kings or emperors. This is Akbar the Great. Akbar the Great is the greatest, the most celebrated and the greatest of all of the Mughal emperors. So starting with Babur in the late 14th century, then going to Humayun, who's the father of Akbar, then Akbar, then Jahangir, then Shah Jahan, then Aurangzeb, and then there may be one or two after, until like 1857, when basically that's the end of the Mughal Empire. Akbar the Great is considered, like I said, the foremost one. And so what's interesting is that there are two times that are given. One of them is this time, and it's based on an astrologer who was there at the birth. And so that's what I thought I would use it for this one. So we're looking to see if the ruler of the 10th involves anything. First of all, notice that the ruler of the 10th it's combust, but not conjunct. Remember how we talked about that? Mercury's at 24, the sun is at 0. So
worst of both worlds, but yeah.
Right, it's combust, but it's not actually fully conjunct because it's out of sign. And then, so I find that to be interesting. Now, there's the other chart is there too, so we'll look at that one and see which one we think better. Akbar was, one of the things about Akbar was that he conquered quite a bit of territory, but once he conquered them, he let people stay with their religion. He didn't destroy temples. He even tried to kind of create his own religion, kind of based on an amalgamation of a bunch of different things. But he did, he was a good guy, but did, conquer quite a bit of India. So it's interesting that you've got the moon and Mars together in Capricorn there, because definitely this person was a conqueror.
Yeah, because Mars, yeah.
And Mercury is the ruler of the first and the 10th. Who's the ruler of who rules part of fortune? Where's part of, so 0, it's moon to sun. So back, what is it? Back 90 forward 10. Back 90 forward 10. So 11 Gemini. So part of fortune is in the 10th house too.
Yeah, there's like a lot of Mercury stuff. How is this guy smart?
He was very smart. Very smart, somewhat learned. He wasn't as learned. Well, remember, his father, Humayun, was an obsessive astrologer. As a matter of fact, he died because he was going up to the temple, he was going up to the tower in his palace to observe a conjunction with Mars and Venus or something like that. And on his way down, he slipped and fell and broke his neck.
Christ. Wait, Humayun and Jahangir. Where are we talking? Where is this? These names are very familiar.
Humayun. The thing is that this Mughal empire comes from Afghanistan.
Okay, that's the connection. Okay,
it comes from Afghanistan. and then they move east into India, but like they move into really what we think of now as Pakistan. The furthest, as far as their own kingdom, the furthest their kingdom in India was until Aurangzeb, who got into the Deccan Plain. But the furthest of their kingdom was Agra. Akbar is responsible for Agra becoming an important place. And there's a place that's close to Agra called Fatehpur Sikri. And Fatehpur Sikri was created by Akbar. It was like his own city.
That's very interesting.
So this chart kind of points.
You know what Akbar means, by the way?
What?
Major. It means like prominence.
That makes sense. Akbar, prominent, the great. So the great prominence.
Like they say when a common phrase, like my dad uses it when he's trying to lift up something really heavy. So he'll say Allah Akbar, like God
is
like
great.
yeah, exactly. Akbar.
Yeah, Allahu Akbar. That's right. That's right. Akbar. And they were Islamic. They were Muslim.
Yeah. But I'm just saying the word, like the meaning sometimes like correspond with the position, which is interesting.
It is interesting, especially because he was known as Akbar the Great. Akbar the Great. There we go.
Yeah, a little superfluous. This is already that's what Akbar means.
Isn't that fascinating? So this is the other chart, just in case. I'm not going to spend any time with that one. What I want to do next, actually, I'm going to stop there. I think I think we've looked at a lot of charts. Oh, I know what I want to do. I want to look at that chart it says successful but miserable. Okay, this chart, the reason I brought this chart up was because this chart, in my opinion, this was the chart that kind of showed me what I thought maybe the 10th house was doing, what the 10th house ruler was actually doing. So this person, they wrote in how their career has been going really, really well, but they hate it. They hate everything about it. They're not happy. They're not enjoying it. They're doing really well. They're making money hand over fist, but they are not happy. So what I thought was interesting about this was notice the mutual reception between Venus, or not the mutual reception, but the generosity between Venus and Mars. And the fact that Venus is with Saturn, meaning that this Venus-Saturn connection is the dispositor of the Mars. And also the dispositor of the moon, right? Because Saturn is the dispositor of the moon, Venus is the dispositor of the Mars. So Saturn is obviously things we don't enjoy. Mars in Libra is, a planet in detriment, isn't usually very happy. Now we've seen other planets in detriment. Remember, we saw LeBron James's ruler of the 10th house in fall with Mars. Oh, no, it was somebody else. Maybe it was who was it with, it was Jupiter and Gemini with Mars in fall. It was somebody else. It was somebody else.
It's on the tip of my tongue. Hold on.
Aretha? It was Aretha.
Was it Aretha?
It was Aretha. But for LeBron, the ruler of the 10th was Jupiter and Jupiter and Capricorn. And that was what led me to believe that the approach to the professional life was highly, highly serious. Which then brings me to my sequitur, my non sequitur, my sequitur, which is that I think that similar to how the second house shows our cycle with money, how we are with money. It's not the thing that shows us what will bring the money in, right? We found that the significator for substance was not necessarily the second house, but that the second house showed us that once we had the money, what we were going to do with it, how we dealt with it.
Oh, snap. I didn't know you thought that.
Well, I
That's
mean, from
crazy.
what we've been seeing, from what,
Yeah.
go
No,
back-
I agree. I mean, I think it's not says like very, it has like promise. I just hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, so go back to the videos and just go to the chart reading section
Mm-hmm.
of it when you
No,
do,
will do. No, will
And-
do. Thank you.
and you'll see what I'm talking about. I mean, once again, everything that we talk about is to be researched, and everything is to be researched more and more to make sure that we're on
Oh
it.
my God. Me and my best friend. Yeah. Jupiter is the ruler and it's in, and we spend money. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 I feel this. Okay. Keep going.
Okay, but yeah, but I'm interested in your opinion next week. So
Okay.
if you do check those things out before next week, let me know. And matter
Yeah. I'll
of fact,
take a look.
that's for all of you. That's for all of you. If you want to go back to the stuff that I did on the second house, it's in the traditional astrology chart. I mean, the traditional astrology class. Then I also did a separate one, and we talk about the exact same thing that we talk about in the traditional class. If you go to either of those, then I talk about that because I've pretty much come to that conclusion. So I'm beginning to feel that the ruler of the 10th house shows how we approach our career. How we do it, how we get it, how we do it, what we
Like not what we do or what our success is, how we do it.
Exactly. Just the ruler of the 10th. Mind you, because remember, once again, the 10th house is like the second house in that the planet that we're looking for to represent what we do is not necessarily the ruler of the 10th.
Yeah.
But the ruler of the 10th is still there. So what the fuck is he doing? We've seen chart after chart after chart after chart today. None of these charts tell us what the person does for a living. None of the rulers of the 10th. And we can do it with them. Maybe what we'll do after this one is we'll just look at a few people whose jobs we know. Right? A few famous people who we know what kind of work they did, and we'll see. We'll test it for this theory. So this particular theory is that no, the rule of the 10th doesn't show us what kind of work the person does. It doesn't show us how high they will go in life necessarily, but it does show us how they will approach that area of life.
So for example, this guy in detriment in the 4th is how he approaches his work is kind of what you're saying.
So I would even, not so much even the detriment part, but just the fact of Mars, more than likely this guy's a workaholic. That's probably another.
Okay.
Probably another reason that
sign in Mars. Okay.
Right. So it's because Mars acts before he thinks. So this person is more than likely acting, doing, doesn't stop, and then gets home and wonders why he wants to kill himself.
Yeah, because he's acting without thinking. Okay, that's cool. I mean, not cool for him, but interesting.
And I'm saying that because the Venus Saturn.
And honestly, I know you don't like them fixed stars, i.e., like Pluto. I don't think that helps, though. I don't think it helps.
Oh yeah, Venus with Pluto too. It's very close. It's quite close. No, it doesn't help. Yeah, no, it doesn't help.
I just think it adds intensity to a situation that maybe is already being, shall we say, overdone. 100%. Like having Scorpio planets. Yeah, like it's not. Yep.
Yeah, totally. 100%. Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. You're 100% correct in my opinion. It does. It does exactly that. Note the moon's in the 8th. So yep. This person just naturally falls into the underworld.
I would also say too, this is just my thought, but like moon in Aquarius in the 8th, there's like, yeah, they fall into the underworld. That's the place that the stuff is happening, but there might be a bit of a disconnect, like an air fixed sign between the sort of like their body and needs and what's happening. I could see them falling into
that. Yes. Especially because Aquarius, you see, I have real problem. I've got planets in Aquarius. I have real problems with being physically embodied. I have real problems with being in my body. This would absolutely be the case. Absolutely.
No, Yeah, I know because I'm there too. Sun and ascendant for me.
Oh,
but
that's
yeah.
right. That's right. Right. You've got Mars and Venus.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so especially and moon is like moon, ascendant, chart ruler, Mars, those kind of planets that are really super about tangibility. Those kind of planets in Aquarius often will disconnect the person from their physicality.
And in this case, it is the chart ruler because he's this Cancer
That's why
ascendant.
I said you're 100.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
That's why I said you're 100% on the money, in my opinion, with this. Yeah, you're 100% on the money for him. So what would we tell this guy? He's successful but miserable. What's the advice, especially you, since you're kind of nailing it? What would you tell him?
Oh man, I get so nervous with the advice. I always feel like it's like Deepak Chopra, like BS. But I guess I would say if that's the problem, if he's not sort of in touch with his body, and there's a lot of Mars, which tends to speed things up, I would encourage him or her to get in touch with what they're feeling in a situation and to sort of slow down, to not work so quickly and like think about the effect that their work is having on them and what they really want. Like they need to kind of reflect and do something slow.
Very good. Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Fantastic. That was wonderful. Excellent.
Thanks, Antoine.
Stupendous. All right, let's just look at a few people whose jobs we know. All right. Okay, here's Giacomo Puccini. He's the composer of Madame Butterfly and La Boheme. So Cancer is on the cusp, and Moon is relatively close, within 8 degrees. So I would pretty much make it. Now, here's an interesting thing about Puccini. Puccini was a womanizer, humongous womanizer. And not only was he a womanizer, he adored the feminine. He was a female worshiper, really. And all of his operas, there's a term for the soprano roles in a Puccini opera. It's called the Puccinian Little Woman. And all of his operas really focus on a woman. There are almost no operas of his that focus on a man. So the most important operas, the first important opera is called Manon Lescaut, about a woman. The second important opera is called La Boheme, and the lead character is a woman who dies of tuberculosis. The next important opera is called Madama Butterfly. The next opera after that is called La Fanciulla del West, the Girl of the Golden West. The last opera that he ever wrote is called Turandot, which is about a princess in China. This man was obsessed with women, obsessed with the feminine. 10th house. It doesn't tell us what he does. It tells us what substance he brings to it. Let's talk about it that way. He's bringing the female substance to it. So that's the first thing that hits me about this. Nothing about this midheaven says music. Look, Saturn in the 10th. Oh, here's an example of Saturn in the 10th for a night chart. A famous person with Saturn in the 10th. Even in detriment and retrograde.
Antoine, this doesn't matter, and I hate to be this nationalistic, but I feel like compelled to tell you this. Turandot is actually it was set in China. It is a Persian story with Persian etymology to it.
I'm not surprised.
And I will shut up now.
And you know what? I'm not surprised at all, because guess what? In the very first scene, the Prince of Persia is beheaded.
Yeah, dude. Yes.
So absolutely makes perfect sense. I mean, all of these are, and so so many of these folk tales, you have different variations in different countries, or he just decided to set it there. But
yeah, there's more. I think there's more correspondence than people give credit for. Like Aladdin, they say was originally set in China.
Ooh, and here's the other thing is that he was very much about exoticism. There is a musical movement that Puccini is right in the center of. It's called chinoiserie, and basically it's this exotification or exoticization of the Asian. And
Oh,
Madama Butterfly is the primary example of chinoiserie in opera. And you've got Debussy doing it, and you've got Debussy doing it with with certain music in instrumentally, and in opera you've got Turandot and Madama Butterfly. So there's this real interest in things that are foreign. All of his operas take place in almost anywhere but Italy. Manon Lescaut in Paris, La Boheme in Paris, Madame Butterfly in Japan, Girl of the Golden West in California, Turandot in China. See what I mean?
yeah.
Very few of them. There are a few that take place in Italy, but very few actually take place in Italy. And note that the ruler of the ninth is opposing the ruler of the 10th here.
Okay. Venus.
So there's a connection between this moon in Cancer and this Mercury in Capricorn, who's the ruler of the ninth.
Yes.
So once again, the ruler of the 10th isn't telling us what the person does. It isn't telling us how high the person will go. This kind of implies that the person will go high, right? Because moon's in his own sign. But it's not, we can't really bank on it. So that's why I keep saying, in my opinion, it looks like the second house and the sixth house are showing us what we bring to the area of life that's being talked about. Now we had quite a few doctors. Remember, we did all those surgeons. Let me see if I can find one of these surgeons. Here's a George Eugene Moore. Now, George Eugene Moore, administrative surgeon and cancer researcher, notable for his discovery of the link between chewing tobacco and mouth cancer.
Oh my God, what rules the mouth first?
So the sun rules the mouth, and the second. I would use the second house for the mouth.
Okay. Okay. Let's see.
Notice that the sun rules the second.
Okay. Okay.
All right. And notice that the sun is in the same sign. The midheaven is at 5 degrees. The sun is within 5 degrees of the midheaven. There's the mouth.
That's super cool.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
This doesn't tell us that
Honestly.
he's a surgeon. Although Mars, sharp objects, and Mars is in Scorpio.
Where? Oh, Mars and Scorpio. Yeah. There's cutting.
However, now here's the thing: this guy's not famous. He's he's famous in his own area. This person got to the height of his career. A pioneer. There's the Uranus with the sun. A pioneer in his career. A pioneer in the area of the mouth. Uranus, sun Uranus. There, I'll use it. And note how the sun is applying to the trine of the ruler of the 10th. So if anything, this might show it a little bit more, even though this shows it a little bit more than the rest of them do, doesn't it? Because we already know that Mars is connected to surgery. Mars is ruling the 10th. Oh no, Mars isn't ruling the 10th. He rules, the midheaven is ruled by Jupiter, who's in the second of the mouth.
Oh, because you're looking at it whole sign, huh?
I'm looking at it whole sign. So the midheaven's in Pisces, but the 10th house is Mars. So the midheaven in Pisces, sun is on the midheaven, which means that sun Jupiter, and Jupiter, look at how Jupiter, there's a reception between Jupiter and the sun.
Yeah. But again, though, Jupiter's in a mouth sign too. Like it all points towards mouth.
Mouth. It all points to the mouth. But it doesn't specifically point to surgery.
No, it doesn't.
I mean,
No, it doesn't. And the moon there and Mercury there, I don't know. I'm wondering.
but remember, Mercury isn't really there. The midheaven is 5 degrees So Moon, Mercury are together, which shows the intelligence.
So you don't give 7 degrees. I feel like orbs are really interesting. Oh, it's like boring to like discuss, but it's interesting to me what counts and what doesn't according to different astrologers.
Oh no,
You more than 5 degrees, you're like, it's not really connected.
No. I remember I give 8 degrees for the midheaven. I give 8 degrees for angles. I give 5 degrees for succeedent and 3 degrees for cadent. But in this case, Mercury is at 12 degrees. Mercury is 7 degrees. I mean, he's still very strongly in the 10th, but he's not on the midheaven. I mean, he's within 7 degrees, so that's pretty good. And Moon too.
Okay.
They're both really close. But remember, the Moon and Mercury are the soul indicators, and they're both in a Jupiter sign, which is in a sign ruled by the Sun in the second house, the mouth.
Again, the mouth. Yeah. And I don't have reason for it, but this guy comes off kind of like he cared about what he did, is what the chart looks like to me.
Definitely.
Like it was there.
Definitely. And another deadly serious type, but not the same way LeBron. This person's deadly serious about the undiscovered waters. Cancer rising, ruler of the 10th in water, the midheaven in water. It's what's down there. What's down in there? What's one of the wettest parts of the body? The mouth.
It's true.
I mean, certainly inside the body is really wet, but as far as what can be accessed, your pussy and your mouth. Those are the wettest parts of the body.
Yeah. We should say maybe, the mouth with more regularity.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. The pussy has to be wetted. You know, it has to get wet, right? But the mouth always has some kind of wetness in there. Unless you've spoken too much way. But aside from that, so here we have George Eugene Moore, a doctor, and we get to see, so we see the substance. What we also see kind of is the sun is fame, or the sun is high dignity. So this would point to that, in my opinion.
Okay.
That there's some kind of high dignity as a result of stuff that's being done around the mouth. But see, if we didn't know, the second house is also money. And Jupiter's in the second. So I could have said, oh, maybe this person's in finance.
No.
See?
Yeah, I feel you. It leads you to like oversimplified and therefore erroneous conclusions.
Well, I mean,
not always, but like, yeah.
How do we know? And I think in this particular case, the Mars as ruler of the 10th house is the clue that it's not specifically about finance. Because when there's Mars, it's about where the blood, Mars always draws blood.
Yikes. My Scorpio midheaven.
And
okay.
Scorpio is poisons.
Great.
So I'd be like, maybe, and it's Mars sharp objects on the 10th on the natural.
Oh my God, dude. Is that why you told me I should open a bar? Because alcohol is technically a poison?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay. At least I understand now better.
What did you tell me after what did you tell me after I said you should open a bar? You said, oh my God, I was a wine taster.
Yeah, no, I thought about it for a while.
So I mean,
the validity was not lost. The rationale was not quite apparent until now.
So obviously, since I'm so attracted to, oh wait, here's a writer. Oh wait, where's Ernest Hemingway? Let's get him.
Oh great, do it. So I feel like I am pulling in Ernest Hemingway right now.
How's that?
I mean, I moved to Spain because I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm like trying to write like.
Although he moved there to cover this, he was a journalist, and he moved there to cover the Civil War. Spanish.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's like what he said, but like, what did he do?
Oh,
he just like drank around and like dicked around. Yeah,
he fucked around on his wife there. That's what he met. He met his second wife in Spain.
Yep.
Okay, so Oh, well, see, this one maybe tells us a little bit what's going on. Gemini on the 10th cusp, Mercury and Leo in the 12th.
Who's going to be known for writing?
Mm-hmm. So wait, now if we didn't know this person was a writer and we saw this, what would we think? What would we say?
I would actually still say the same thing, because you look at the 10th and Pluto, Neptune, and what is that? K2 or Rahu? I get them mixed
K2.
up. K2. I would say imaginative and intense. You want to hear like the modern take? And like shit you should move away from. Shit that will cause you harm, which in this case his method of writing did cause him harm because he was an addict basically. And caught up in like Gemini stuff, like air. There's like ideas are important to this person.
Okay. That would be obvious that would make sense.
Those are all the obvious things though. I kind of want to look at it your way though. I feel like it's more precise.
Well, I mean, the thing is that this particular chart does give us, it gives us an idea of a certain thing. Once again, I think it's talking to us more about what is the person doing.
And so Mercury in Leo in the 12th.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting.
It's the Leo in the 12th part that.
Yeah.
I remember when we looked at writers, when we did the Mercury video and we looked at writers, Ernest Hemingway was one of them. We looked at Dickens, we looked at Hemingway, we looked at Sylvia Plath, and Hemingway, we noticed that in almost every case, the Mercury was in a Caden house. And and it made perfect sense because we needed that.
You need to write in private, writing cave.
To write, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So this Hemingway is the perfect Mercury for a writer. So this person would probably be very, very, open to, there's like an isolation where they would have access to all of these different ideas.
Yeah. I think too, for me, Leo is like, for better or worse, there's this like need to be seen, like a pomposity or like recognized, exactly. But it's for things. So what is writing? To me, writing is talking that you can't do to other people. You don't do in person. You do it in private.
Mm-hmm.
So it's communication, private communication, i.e. writing, that you're known for.
And it's also, if you're a fiction writer, it's story.
Yeah, totally.
So there's an aspect of either projecting your story onto another story, because what do they always say? Write what you know. Or there's this aspect of walking into another universe and presenting like the Harry Potter stories. That's all like she created this universe and she wrote it down. Yeah.
On toilet paper at first until she got famous. But yeah, I mean, I know you're not going to be like super into this, but one thing I note about this chart is a sextile from Neptune in Gemini to Mercury.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And like that to me would instill like this imaginative faculty. Like in a bad way, it could be lying. In a good way, it could be fiction writing.
But here's the thing, like, Ernest Hemingway is not considered a person of great imagination. He is considered a person, I mean, because it's interesting, because Hemingway is considered a great writer, but is not considered the greatest storyteller. Think of a person like John Steinbeck. John Steinbeck, who wrote Of Mice and Men, he wrote East of Eden, which is one of my all-time favorite books, and he wrote what's that other one?
Grapes of Wrath. No, that's
Grapes of Wrath. Grapes of Wrath. Yeah. You're absolutely right. Grapes of Wrath.
But to me, that's like not okay. Whatever. Continue. I want to hear you say this. Shut the fuck up. No, tell me. I want to hear what you think.
But is that those books are all about story. The Hemingway books are all about personality and character development.
Okay. In this sense, yes, I agree. Because I thought you were going to go into this like fictitious, not fictitious. And I was like, well, like the Dust Bowl was like a real thing. Like Steinbeck was like actually talking about what was happening. And ditto Hemingway, but in their own ways. One of them creates a story. One of them, yeah.
No. That wasn't where I was going at all. I mean, it's not, and it's even not as though Steinbeck doesn't develop characters. He does very well. It's that Hemingway doesn't develop story as well. And the one book that he wrote that won the Pulitzer Prize is one of his very shortest.
What is it? Old Man in the Sea?
Old Man in the Sea.
Which, by the way, as like a linguist, it contains one of my favorite passages about like gendered like articles like in Spanish. It's beautiful, where they talk about el mar and la mar and like the difference between how they view. I mean, it's actually in this day and age a little bit like sexist, but
and that's the essence of Hemingway as well.
Yeah, kind of sexist, but like beautiful.
Sexism and misogyny.
A little bit, but I don't mean it like in and of itself, but yeah, like perceptive, but in a sexist way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like Henry Miller. I mean, all of those guys from that period, totally sexist, very perceptive, talented people. But in my opinion, Hemingway, I've never really enjoyed Hemingway's books very much because I prefer story to language.
Yeah. I feel you. Hemingway's I think Sun Also Rises is beautiful.
It is. No, you're right. It is. But also For Whom the Bell Tolls is the one that's. Wait, Sun Also Rises, is that the one that takes place in the Spanish Civil War, or is it For Whom the Bell Tolls?
The Sun Also Rises is, I think, in Spain, but I don't think it's during that. Hold on. No, for travel from Paris to. No, they watched like the running of the bulls.
That's right. They did the Pamplona thing. That's right. It's For Whom the Bell Tolls. That's the one about the Spanish Civil War, the romance. And the other thing is that he was obsessed with romance. He was kind of sexually obsessed. And so that's something that we don't really, which is interesting. The moon is in the 5th and opposing Venus. So we don't have a lot of things connected besides that Neptune. And
they're oh no, Venus doesn't do well in Capricorn.
Neptune rules the sea.
Yeah, no, I'm saying Neptune, I feel like it's not so much like you're lying or even necessarily, maybe not imagination in the sense that you're creating a story, but the ability to like, I don't know, I vibe it. I don't have words for this, but like it doesn't surprise me.
Now, notice also that Mercury is the ruler of the 1st and the 10th. So this person themselves we're talking about.
Exactly. It's also where it finds its joy too. I think to me that even though Mercury itself is not in the 1st, ascendant Virgo, like a Mercury ruled ascendant, strengthens the importance of Mercury.
Absolutely.
This is a writerly chart to me.
Okay. Based only on the 10th house or based on the entire chart?
The entire chart, ruler of the ascendant, 10th house.
And so that's the important distinction to me is, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. That's the important distinction. Is it because it's the 10th, is it the 10th house?
No. No, stacked testimony, as you say.
And so that's here's Bill Gates. Now this is a B chart. So it might not be. Now, Venus in the 10th. I mean, the 10th house is Gemini again. Is this a writer's chart?
Wait, I see a transit chart for Cancun, Mexico.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Thank you. Oh, I did the Cancun chart instead of the Bill Gates chart. Sorry.
No, you're cool. I just was expecting, I was like, I know he's got a Jupiter Pluto conjunction in the 2nd, which a lot of modern dudes have used to explain his wealth.
It's it's really the 3rd. Although it would be the 2nd. By sun. It'd be the 2nd.
No, you're right. 2nd by whole sign, but like if you're looking at the within 5 degrees rule, it is 3rd.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so Pisces, and there's that Jupiter. So Pisces is on the cusp of the 10th. Does this tell us what he does for a living?
No, it doesn't really tell you shit. Where's Jupiter? Oh yeah, sorry, we were talking about this. Leo in a second. Yeah, I mean, it tells you that he makes money, like he's involved with the resources.
Well,
It just
yeah, but we have to look at the kind of so we see with the, Pluto can create extremes. We know that. And Jupiter expands. So it looks like whatever it is this person does, that there would be a strong possibility of quite a bit of expansion in their financial area. And then also notice the fact that Jupiter is the ruler of the second from the part of fortune.
1, 2, yeah.
So
Okay, so like double second emphasis.
right, double second, exactly. So there's something that has to do with the 10th house and making money, and specifically money. Now, the thing is that he was a computer guy. He wasn't a finance guy, right? So I might look at this chart and think this person's in finance.
I mean, he ended up, but through the way, like part of fortune. I actually hate this comparison because I have a lot of aqua in my chart and I'm shitty with technology, but isn't Aquarius like part of fortune there could be associated with a little bit technology?
Only if you're using your Uranus as the ruler.
Ew. Okay, no.
Yeah, actually, in Vedic astrology, they give all of this technology and stuff to Rahu, electricity.
Okay. Well, let's look at that. What is that? Gemini?
No, it's in Sagittarius.
Okay, God, I'm really sorry. I don't
So
know why this causes me so many issues.
For Rahu. The circles are above for Ketu and below for Rahu.
It's like something so simple, honestly, is like very difficult for me. Okay, anyway, so Sagittarius, 6th house. Huh.
No, it doesn't really tell us what he does.
No, it doesn't.
This guy's, basically the kind of work he did was Mercury work. He was a computer engineer. He was a computer technician, or a computer programmer. He was like a computer programmer. He created the software package. He created Microsoft. Right. So this guy's a computer person. And look, even with Eve, okay, so the Mars with Mercury makes a little bit more sense. Right? But the Jupiter doesn't, as much as far as telling us what the person does. But even with this Mars, Mercury, and Libra, that wouldn't necessarily tell me what this person did.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at it for like, were you the one who told me this? Oh no, cusp of the 10th is still Aries. Okay, it doesn't make sense. Never mind. No, it's Pisces. Okay. So if Jupiter is what he's known for, what you're known for is different from what you do. He's known for being rich.
Right.
What he did was technology stuff.
Yeah, but it's both.
Yeah. No, I feel you.
They're both in there, honey. That's the thing. That's the problem, is that they're both in there. What you do, how you're known. Remember, we were talking about if I'm not a slut, but I have a reputation as one, that's my 10th house.
Yeah.
And it's my job. And it's how well I'll do in work life.
Yes, I get you. He's known for it. He also did it.
Yeah, well, but no. It could be more than one thing, is what I'm saying, is that what's really what the chart, in my opinion, seems to be pointing at is wealth. As a result, is that the substance of work is wealth, that what comes to work is wealth, that they bring this substance of wealth to work, to their work life. That's kind of like what I was saying, when we were looking at, if we look at Hemingway from this way, what's the substance that Hemingway brings, this substance of ego and the personality to his work and words. So this person would bring this a substance of how to put my ego into words, how to bring myself, how to put this foremost aspect of self into words, which is what he was doing. That's all the fucking old man of the sea is. It's all me against the elements.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And so with Bill Gates, the substance, so that's kind of how it looks like. That's what I'm gravitating.
Okay, I'm getting you now. I'm getting you more.
That feels like
that's what he brings to work is wealth, is Jupiter in Leo.
Is the ability to amass wealth. Just like this guy brought this unfathomable interest in the mouth.
It's true.
And Puccini brought this obsession with women.
Mercury,
And with the
10th,
foreign.
moon.
And the foreign.
Got it. Moon in Cancer.
With women and the foreign. And
Oh my
Elvis
God.
Presley, what's Elvis Presley? What's he bringing?
Okay, 10th, Mercury.
He's
In
bringing,
the
because
second.
remember that Capricorn is a licentious sign. So this person is,
Girl, you ain't got to tell me.
so he's bringing sensuality because notice Venus is there. This person is bringing beauty and sensuality to it.
Yeah. I would argue though, Cap, like, not like beautiful, refined sensuality, like earthy, literally.
I was using
sensuality.
Venus for the beauty
Yeah.
because Venus
Both.
is with the Mercury.
Yeah.
Right? Person is, and here's the other thing. He was attracted to black music, which was considered guttural and low.
Okay. Where you?
There's Saturn. Saturn rules Saturn rules beggars and poor people and shudras. Right?
Holy
Black
shit.
people are the shudras. Black people are the shudras in America.
They are. Yeah.
So
It's fucking
that
cool.
means he even though Capricorn is known to be a sign that rises, right? A sign that's interested in rising, in climbing the ladder and climbing
It's ruled by this interest in.
things that are lower, things that might be a little raunchy, things that might be considered raunchy or low. That's what I get from that Sun, Mercury, Venus.
Holy shit.
So that's what I'm thinking. Let's do one more and then see if we, so it's cool. So it shows us not necessarily what they do for a living, but what they bring to what they do. Ooh, let's look at Judy Garland. Fucking train wreck.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Ha, K2 in the 10th. Oh wait, let's do the I want to do the quadrant chart.
How do you do that? You hit redraw? I don't use solar fire. Okay, you said it.
Oh,
Okay.
I have it saved, so I did. But notice K2 is still in the 10th. It's just not the cusp of the 10th.
But I'm sorry. Would you look at that Uranus?
Mhm.
I know you're not into, but like,
On
look
a-
at
on
that
a
fucking
cusp?
thing.
But on a cusp, absolutely. Right on
Like,
it's right on,
right
exactly on
on the fucking cusp.
so that, I mean, right there it shows the instability.
Yeah, it does. It does. Which to me also too like could potentially show like quick rise and quick fall, like not just instability in a bad way, like bad shit's gonna happen, good shit would happen too. I don't know if it bears out in her
Oh,
life.
yes. Yeah, you're right. Because think, in 1949, at 1950, so 1949, she was fired from Warner Brothers or MGM or whatever, fired from MGM. And she went into rehab. She's such, she was so hopped up on drugs that they put her in rehab. And when she comes out of rehab, she thinks her career is over. But her husband, Sid Luft, realizes that people have always loved her as a singer. And so she starts a second career as a concert performer. And that's what she does to the end of her life. So that, in my opinion, is a good example of what you just talked about, what you just mentioned, how this Uranus can bring sudden changes, a sudden change of direction. And remember, Judy Garland started singing in vaudeville when she was 3 years old with her sisters. So she went from being a vaudeville act to the film, to movies, and becoming one of the most famous people in the world. In 1949, when she was in rehab, she was the most recognized person in the world.
Jesus.
Because of Wizard of Oz. Because of Wizard of Oz. So the Uranus is saying one thing, but it's not the ruler of the 10th.
It's not.
So the ruler of the 10th is this Jupiter or Mars.
Well, it was just funny as I was about to actually tell you, well, two things. One, Jupiter's the ruler. I've also read places that if there isn't a planet, which Uranus, at least in your view, you're kind of seeing it as a fixed star, right? You're not seeing it as a planet. If there's no planet in the 10th, I've read you look, if there's a planet in the 4th, like directly opposing it, you can almost place that in the 10th.
Oh, because it's placing its aspect in the 10th. I guess. I mean, I've never done that, but I can see where they would go with it. I think both the Uranus and the Rahu and the Ketu show us how difficult the 10th would be. First of all, so planets. This is the first chart. This is one of the first, not the first chart, but this is one of the few charts where we have planets in the 10th. But so what's the difference between, what do we think is the real ruler of the 10th? Is it this Jupiter Saturn, or is it this Mars Sun opposition? It's both, isn't it?
Yeah, it's both. It's not either or.
Because that's the
'Cause
good.
you see, yeah, you see the like intense work and the like maybe sort of health problems, I would say, in the 12-6 axis. And you see maybe the fame, like you see kind of both topics come up.
I think that the Saturn Jupiter Rahu shows the intense talent and fame. That, and so the intense talent and the rising, the kind of the rise, the good. This is the good of it, in my opinion. It's the fame, it's the renown, it's the all of that stuff. And then I think that if we use the Mars Sun shows us the instability in the non-modern way, right? Because Mars Sun is highly choleric, right? Both of those are planets of cholera.
Yeah.
Close, right? So it's too much. It's too darn hot is the name of the song, right? So too darn hot, and so now we've got them opposing each other, right? So this would create so much tension, so much contention. There'd be fighting, there'd be contention, there'd be misunderstanding, there'd be just all kinds of. It would be shitty. It would be shitty.
It probably was shitty.
It was
Imagine
shitty.
being a child star. I think it's like guaranteed like mental issues. None of this 6-12 stuff surprises me. The Uranus on the mid, that does not surprise me.
And then how everything went off the rails, after 1958, 54,
Yeah.
after 1955, 58, just
Yeah.
things go off the rails until, she's 80 pounds when she's dead. She's 80 pounds and married to a
Christ.
20-year-old.
Yeah.
When
Makes me kind of want to look too, though, like celebrities, because a lot of them have timed birth charts. The ones who are famous since they were young and like mental health issues. I bet you they all have indicators of issues.
Shirley Temple, no.
Not so much, or yeah?
No, not so much. But of course, Shirley Temple only had that short amount of time, and she was so young.
And then she left. Or like, what's her name? Like, I wonder what Drew Barrymore's chart looks like.
Oh, Drew Barrymore was a mess.
Yeah, exactly.
By 10 years old, by 10, she was in rehab or something like that.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
And remember, her great uncle is John Barrymore, who killed himself with drink. Like the Barrymores, Lionel Barrymore, John Barrymore, the Barrymore men, drunks. And John Barrymore, the worst of them. I mean, just a complete fucking drunk. So it runs in the family, the susceptibility. And then of course, once again, it's also a theater family. So usually there's going to be a lack of convention in those kinds of families. I've gone a little over. Sorry about that, you all. Everybody stayed though. That's good to know. I'm going to stop the thing.